Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dowie, you were sideways for a moment there. I thought you were on a boat or something.
Coming to the UK. Wa alaikum assalam.
Dowie,
You're muted, Uncle
you're
Dowie.
also
You're
muted,
muted.
brother. We can't hear you. So just here we go. I think so. Assalamu alaikum, Dowie.
Wa alaikum salam. Right, I tried to put it side screen and then I lost the connection again. I don't know what I'm doing.
That's all right. Well, we've got you back, and that's the main thing, inshallah. All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Jazakallah khair for joining us today. I think it's an important stream, actually, because we're going to, inshallah, move into, the reasons why it's such an important stream. But we've got the man here himself, Dowie, who had a discussion on a podcast with a guy called Liam Tuffs. He's got a very large channel, quite a large following. And so, Dowie, tell us a little bit about this podcast. First of all, how did you find yourself on there?
You know what? I mean, I was kind of nervous of the situation in the moment. So it's very hard for me until I actually watch the podcast through how it played out. Because sometimes your memory can play tricks on you. You know, you sort of think you did one thing, or said one thing and you didn't in reality. So in the actual moment, I was not nervous of him, but nervous of the whole setup, you know, like being there, knowing the type of questions it will be, knowing the amount of people that would watch it afterwards, and the kind of pressure that the community, you know, obviously I didn't want to let the community down, the brothers down. So I was kind of nervy, not nervous of him, but nervous of the situation during it. And it didn't help that I had a stinking cold. I really had a bad cold that day, the day before that and that day. So that didn't add to it. But I think hindsight, always a wonderful thing. You know, we're all better versions of ourselves when we afterwards in hindsight. Yeah. Lots of things I would have said differently. Lots of things I think there was a few open goals I missed as well. Liam left a couple of open goals hanging, and I should have said something in it. Like when he says, give me 6 things to condemn now, and I'll tear him a new a-hole right now. I'll condemn him right now. I should have said the IDF. You know, in hindsight, I just missed an open goal, but you know, that's life, innit? You know, sometimes.
Yeah, but I to be fair, I mean, I would agree not to be hard on yourself, because I would say with these things, with a live discussion, it's not about each and every question. It's actually about the overall result. And I think the overall result was that I think you really held yourself very well in a dignified way. I think you came across with decorum and respect, which is unfortunate because Liam, unfortunately, doesn't seem to have decorum and respect. And I'll be very frank. You know, just because you're in somebody's gaff, as he put it, he can say whatever he likes. Well, actually, no, because if he came to your gaff and you swore at his mum, I don't think he'd be too happy about that, quite frankly. So, you know, and to say, oh no, but it's different when it's my mum or when it's my kids or when it's my family. Well, yeah, it's different for you. It's not different for me. It's worse for me when you say things like that about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the point here is, just because you don't value it or just because you don't think it's important, doesn't mean I don't think it's important. So, and that's what decorum and respect actually is, where it takes the other person's point of view to an extent whereby you temper your language to be respectful, not confrontational unnecessarily, and certainly not to be grotesque in your language, because that's just not being a decent human being, quite frankly. But I think we just seem to be in this sort of trendy time where if you drop the F-bomb lots of times and you use these words and that words, it's actually something cool and like you're one of the people and what have you. And it's just a shame. I mean, Jordan, I mean, we keep getting told about British values, but is that really British value? Is that like your grandma, your great-grandma, your great-granddad? Would they have been happy with that type of language, that type of decorum, that type of respect?
No, I mean, I know.
No.
Yeah, I think Dowie was saying that, you know, Liam is kind of like that even off camera. But like you say, when you are talking about someone's religion and prophet, you should really have the decorum to give it the respect it deserves. And he clearly, I think from the podcast, I think one person was trying to get gotcha moments with no research whatsoever. and the other one was sincerely there trying to explain with information.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you did that really well, Dowie. I think in terms of, I think if you went there trying to score goals, and you said these open goals, maybe you missed them because you were actually trying to educate people and you're actually trying to give people decent answers. And that was, you came across well in the podcast overall, and it shows even in the messages. I think that
what's your view?
I think when you watch it backwards, you just
the real Dawah. When you watch it, into all the stuff you said, but the real Dawah was you. It got heated many times where you could have lost it, and I know probably the old Dowie would have been tearing that studio to pieces.
I did want to. There was a point where I was on that edge where Dowie, are you going to do something, or are you going to try and keep this? Because I did go there with a particular plan, to sort of get this, because that would have been the end of the podcast. Nothing would have got said. It would have been his word against mine, or who done what and what said what, So I thought, I've come here to do this. There's been prep work that gone into it. It's important for the community and the non-Muslim community to hear a different side of this. So I just thought, just hold it down. Just, you come here to do it.
Stronger man that controls his anger, right? And I think
exactly, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said it's not the stronger of the two is not the other one who wrestles the other one to the ground, but the one who remains calm and composed from his anger. He controls his anger. The one who controls his anger is the stronger. We just seem to be
I was more disappointed in Liam's substance rather than even the way he behaved. I kind of expected that, but the lack of substance, I don't think he ever came back really with any. I didn't learn anything from Liam that day. Do you know what I mean?
He was just getting frustrated because I wouldn't answer questions in the way that he wanted questions answered, and I think that was frustrating him because he knew that his audience would be watching this, and his audience weren't getting what they wanted to get. He was out there to service his audience, and they weren't getting the moments that they wanted, and he wasn't on top of it. And I was doing a lot more talking than he was, and I think that he was worrying a little bit about how this might land on his audience, but ultimately it's done decent numbers for him, and that's all really that he's moving on. He's done about 3 or 4 podcasts since then, released 3 or 4 podcasts at least since then. So it's just numbers on his channel, isn't it?
And I'll stop chapping in a minute, but do you think that he should be given credit or props for giving you a voice on there, or do you think it's purely
in some ways I think he should, Jordan, and in some ways I don't, because his intention wasn't to have me on there to do that. When he pulled me on, he thought he was going to, make a job out of it. He thought he was going to handle it his way. Had he have known in hindsight how it was going to go, he wouldn't have done it. I don't think. I think if he could have had a preview of how the podcast was going to end up, I don't think he would do it. And if I had a preview of how it's going to end up, I would do it. You know what I mean? So. But I think, he can now turn around to his audience or our audience and say, well, yes, I get a lot of people that are against Islam on, but I've had 3 of your guys on already. And one of them was, defending the religion, to the point where he wouldn't back down on anything. And I gave him all the time he needed to talk. So I think he can kind of say that, he can say that, and to some extent he did do that. Especially towards the end when he let me talk about how I found Islam, and he didn't get involved then. He kind of stepped back a bit from there.
The only issue with that, Dowie, is that he will get Muslims who'll come on like you, and he will basically come up with statements that are not factual, that are not supported by any data or any statistics. It's just pure hearsay. And he'll use that against you, hoping that you won't know the stats, you won't know all the data, so he can get away with effectively look, you can say it however you want to say it, but if you say something that's not truthful, that's a lie,
Yeah. So, and if you know it's not truthful, then you are definitely lying.
But at the same time, Dowie, what he will do is he'll get these ex-Muslims and non-Muslims and what have you, who will also spout lies about Islam, not supported by data, not supported by stats. But guess what? He won't challenge anything that they say. So the point here is that the measure of being honest and having, transparency and I would say, some form of objectivity is that you at least check the claims that are being made by your ex-Muslims and your non-Muslims who are saying things against Islam, okay? And at the same time, you don't make erroneous, pulling arguments out of a hat from nowhere without supportive data, okay, against the Muslims, because then you just become a propaganda piece. You're just basically spouting propaganda and nonsense, and basically what you're doing is you're feeding people's predispositions who already hate Islam, who basically are going to accept everything that's anti-Islam. Do you see what I mean? So that's the danger. And I mean, that is what a lot of, unfortunately, these podcasts do. Ijaz, what do you think, Ijaz?
Well, I want to say that, Brother Dowie, I really appreciate the work that you did on that podcast, because I don't think I would have done as well as you did. You were in the hot seat, and I think you commanded the room quite well. I think that, because I had never seen a podcast of Liam's before, but after watching your podcast, I tried to look at his videos, and he very much likes to be in the driver's seat for the conversation. But with you, he just couldn't get a handle on you. Every time he thought he can hold on to a particular point, you brought a different point and an answer that he didn't like. And he never got that, like, a good grasp of you to control the conversation. So could he turn around and say that he allowed you to speak as you wanted to speak? Yes. But at the same time, I don't think he had a choice. Your answers were so good and so reasonable because you articulated yourself well. I don't think he really had a leg to stand on. So I was really appreciative of the way that you framed your answers, the time that you took to answer each question, the questions you asked in response to him, and the refutations that you would give along the way. So I think Liam had a tough time. Excuse the pun. Liam tough time. Okay. But yeah,
it was tough for Liam Tuffs.
Yep. That was those are my thoughts on it, Brother Abbas.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think let's get straight into the podcast then, and let's get to the first clip, Ijaz, and then we'll start with you, Dowie, and then we'll comment on what we've just heard and seen.
Okay, here we go.
Tell the audience why you're here. You made a few videos. You included me in your videos on social media. The last one was you commented on an interview that I'd done with Alfie Best, who is a Muslim convert, and I asked him about the Prophet Muhammad and Aisha.
Correct.
The age gap, whether he thought it was okay or not. You commented on that.
I did.
You said that if I asked you that question, you would give me such a comprehensive answer.
You wouldn't have to ask it again.
I'd never dare ask it again.
You know what you done? You teed the young lad up for the question. You teed him up, didn't you? So,
well, of course, that's what I do.
Well, that's what you do. So I thought, and he weren't really ready for that. I could see it. You knew it. And you said, well, you come with the usual. So is the Prophet Muhammad the best of examples and everything else? And then I knew what you was going to just get to the point. And then you asked whether he would marry a 9-year-old. So I thought, you teed him up on the question. And I don't think he was ready for it. I mean, he's a nice enough guy. I never met him, but he seems like a nice enough young man.
He is a nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to hear more of that, or Uncle Abbas, you're muted?
Sorry. Yeah, we can comment on
it. I think what I would say here is clearly the introduction Liam wanted, because I've heard obviously what happened slightly before this. It was all nicey, and I think he's gone straight into right. So you said this to me on social media, and he's not doing it in an evil way, but he's setting the tone of confrontation right from the outset, isn't it? There's no there's no icebreaker here.
I can't hear Jordan.
Yeah, we can hear Jordan.
Can't hear Jordan. Can anyone hear Jordan?
Can you hear me, Dowie? Dowie, can you hear me?
Is this
Uncle Dowie
working?
Dowie's like me, absolutely useless when it comes to technology.
Can you hear anyone, Dowie?
I don't think he can.
Maybe he needs to log in and out, and then maybe.
Maybe we can call him, and then it does. When we're doing the comments, maybe we can take this screen off and then get us back.
You don't like looking at that handsome face? Come on now.
It reminds me of EastEnders.
That vein got bigger and bigger as the podcast went on.
You know what? You might have a good point.
So,
Uncle Dowie,
Sorry, I missed Jordan there. I think my headphones.
That's all right.
All I was saying was, Dowie, that the when you normally podcast somebody, the first few questions are normally icebreakers, isn't it? Like, get to know.
Yeah, let's just work into this. So like round one of a boxing, innit? Just feel each other out.
You said this about me, yeah. You said you're I'm not gonna ask it again. Well, here it is. Age of Aisha. So it was obviously the tone was straight into confrontation. Podcast. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, we was having an English off, So if you notice, my tone of voice changed, my accent changed slightly. I cut certain words down a bit because it was like, it is like a bit of a who's going to be the most English here, So I said, instead of saying didn't you, I say didn't you, So I was, little things like that. So I was kind of just saying, yeah, I'm kind of, if I want to drop it, I'll drop it. But yeah, he did go straight in, as he said, so crudely. He just went straight in with it. It was no dancing around. How you doing? How was your, none of the politeries or the etiquettes of introducing someone slowly into a podcast. It was, okay, let's get on. And, I wanted it that way. I did. I wanted it that way. I didn't want to talk to him too much because outside the podcast studio's got like a little seated area with sofas and chairs and I didn't really want to overly talk to him there. I didn't want to get too sort of involved. So I kind of just wanted to get this on. It's like going to have a fight. You don't want to be dancing around. You just want to go there, get on, get it out. It's like going to the dentist. Go get in the chair, open your mouth and let him start drilling. Don't want to be talking to the dentist for half an hour. So
I think, and we'll see him says it. He says something like, "Let's go balls deep."
Yes, let's straight in balls deep. Yeah.
When I first heard that, that's what I remember most about the podcast. I was watching it thinking, I'm going to enjoy this. Straight away, I thought this guy's not serious. It's just like, using that language straight off. Look, I know straight away down the pub and with your mates, you might use that.
I think what it is, we've got to be honest here. There are obviously serious shows where there are serious interviews and there is a genuine attempt to really understand the other person's position.
Like Piers Morgan.
Then there are podcasts. Podcasts that are really fundamentally there to be entertaining and to earn money. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, perhaps we're judging Liam in a way whereby we're comparing him to what, a serious podcast where it's actually information that's coming out that is truly representative of the subject matter from the horse's mouth. Okay. I don't think Liam's interested in that. Liam wants to entertain, he wants his crowd to get the popcorn out, enjoy themselves, earn a few pounds out of it, and maybe popularity, whatever it might be. I just don't think that he can claim that he's sincere in wanting to find out what Muslims really believe, because if he was serious, he wouldn't lie about Islam and just make stuff up and lie about statistics and make stuff up. He wouldn't be lazy and not study the subject matter that he's talking about. And when he gets ex-Muslims on and they blur out a whole lot of propaganda, rubbish, nonsense, again, nothing, anchored to any data or statistics or actual factual information. To me, that's not a serious podcast. That's just an entertainment. So I think perhaps we're looking at it in a different way, and maybe we're being unfair because maybe that's all it is. It's just a bit of entertainment for the people, a bit of bread and circus, as it were. You know what I mean? So Dowie, he obviously asked the first question, which is somewhat predictable. I mean, we get this, and we've had this now for the last the question only really started around a century ago anyway. Before that, nobody ever asked this question. And the reason why they didn't ask this question is because actually it was the norm in society to marry very young. It was just what was done. But anyway, he asked this question, and I think he asked it in a very crude way as well, because he said, is effing a 9-year-old? So he said it's something along those lines. And I think you did take him up on it. And then he said, I won't be effing told how I should speak on my podcast, which I personally think is just basically saying that I can be vulgar and vile and I can be derogatory as much as I want because it's my podcast, because it's my gaff. Okay. Yeah. But as I said earlier, if you'd invited him to your podcast and you start swearing at his children or his mum or his wife, maybe he wouldn't accept it and just take it on the chin.
And is it not British values, Abbas, to be hospitable and be respectful?
Well, clearly we seem to be transforming our British values when it comes to often the far right and people who tend to feed the far right with this sort of rubbish, right? Their British values are transforming like a chameleon. They change colours so fast, so rapidly. I think that a lot of British people, that's why when you ask British people, when you ask English people, what are British values, they start bringing up things like queuing and stuff like that, because it's a moving target. It literally is a moving target. You can't put your flag on the mast and say these are what British values are. Whenever you put somebody on the spot, they don't seem to have a clue what British values actually are. There are decent, good values that most people will recognize around the world. Okay, decorum, respect, not thieving, not killing people, not doing this, not doing that, not being unjust to people. These are just common good values that global society share. Some are better at it, some are worse at it. In some societies, what you find is that you'll find maybe the people themselves might show a level of injustice that perhaps we might not have here. But then what we will have here is that the government itself will show huge injustice, not only to its own people, but to everybody overseas as well. There are good values and bad values that people may follow. But the point is, are we really better at everything? And are all the other countries worse at everything? I think that's a very wild, outrageous claim, quite frankly. But as I say, there are no such thing, as far as I'm concerned, as quintessential British values. I think that's just a myth, quite frankly. But anyway, Dowie, so he went straight into the Age of Aisha. You tried to explain it with all the necessary nuances, but he wasn't having it. He didn't want to have the nuances. He wanted a yes or no answer.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, he did. Like I said before, I answered the question. These questions are normally asked disingenuously. People are not interested in the answer. They genuinely don't want the answer. At some point, if you answer it, you're defending paedophilia, and if you say you don't believe that, you don't follow that opinion, follow the opinion she was older, then you're lying. You're practicing taqiyya, and so you're on a losing battle with these guys, because at some point you're going to say yes, he married a 9-year-old. That's it. I'm not interested. No, that's it. Nothing else you can say that's going to make me change my mind. So for a lot of these people, it's they don't want the answer. The answer is irrelevant. They're just waiting for you to say yes, he married her, but they're not interested. So it's a tough one to and like you said, I'm not convincing him. But I'm not supposed to convince you. I'm just explaining it to you. Whether you're convinced or not, it's up to you.
And the other thing is that there's a lot of hypocrisy involved here, because if you trace back your own forefathers, and it doesn't matter whether you're Indian origin or Pakistani origin or Chinese origin or Native American origin or English origin, it doesn't really matter. You go back to your family tree, you'll find that your great-great-grandmother was 14, or somebody was 12, or somebody was 13, somebody got married at 9 or 10. You will find that in your family tree. Now, the point is, why are you not condemning that then? Why are you not saying my ancestors are pedophiles?
I think he did say he condemns them all, if I'm not mistaken.
He does.
So he condemns everybody historically.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's your view.
No, he does. He has a personal thing about this because of his dad. His dad got 18 years. Liam was a chief witness to give him help that sentence 18 years. And I think it was earlier that day he heard that his dad was up for parole a year early.
Right.
So he has a trauma experience with this type of thing. And I think he just projects that across anything. I mean, if I said I wanted to marry a girl who was 16, he wouldn't want it. It's like he just has this thing. Look, I get where it comes from. I get that he's where this attitude comes from, but I think it's stronger in him than it is maybe a lot of people listen to him.
Yeah, but just because he says he condemns all of it and it's all wrong, doesn't make it wrong. That's the point.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it wrong.
That's his view. He's entitled to his view, but unless he can establish it with reason, with logic, with evidence, with a strong argument, rather than say it feels wrong, I don't like it, and therefore it's all wrong. Well, that's not an argument. Imran, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Sorry, my internet issues. I can't.
I know that you had a few issues with your internet.
You guys all right?
Imran, we constantly get this argument, this emotional argument based upon age of Aisha radiallahu anha. And I don't know if you managed to see the podcast or the clips or whatever, but what's your view on it?
So just a couple of things. So just since I've come on, you guys are mentioning the manner in which this is put forward. So there's two things here. So first, there is this, I've got to show my audience that I'm going to get one over on this person, or, I'm going to put him in his place. And a lot of what I've heard from the bits of the podcast that I've seen, there was a lot of this sort of attempt to do that. And mashallah, Brother Dowie was really stoically held his position, and to his credit, and I think that shone through, mashallah. So that was a great thing. But there is this thing about, I'm going to try and put this person in their place, or these people in their place, wherever that's coming from. The other thing is that because it's an emotional argument, because you can't argue from a historical perspective, because there's no historical issue here. So the only argument you're going to make is you're going to make an argument of shock value from my current worldview. So your current worldview is what? The secular West and our current views on the age of marriage. And then you're going to apply that retrospectively, the presentism, you're going to apply that retrospectively to history. Well, then, like you were saying, you have to condemn your great grandparents. You have to condemn all of the monarchs of the UK who are cousin marrying and who are marrying young, God knows for how long. But the one way of trying to put this argument and make it sound more effective is to make it an aggressive argument, an emotional argument. And the more vulgar it is, the language shocks as well as the ages shocks. And that's what he was trying to do. And it was almost like he was trying to get a gotcha moment. And I don't think that was handed to him, because the whole point here is we were talking about the historical perspective. And then the criteria for Islam is very clear. You mentioned that you've got to be physically mature, mentally mature, according to what that society deems to be marriageable age. So if the society deems this a marriageable age, you can't now come and go back and say, well, all these people, because it would have been the whole society of condemning everyone 300 years and back in history, everyone, even those in the UK, let's call them all pedophiles.
But he'd happily do that.
Yeah, but there's a problem with that, because the people who he's calling this to, they were in marriages with a person for however long they were. They had great outcomes. The people lived lives wonderfully, and they led to us who were part of society now. So usually things like abuse, things like mistreatment, or people, they become defunct. So if you look at Aisha, she had a part of her life after the Prophet had passed away. What happened to her? She became one of the greatest scholars known to Islam. She even, leadership positions, even led in battle. Yeah, we're not talking about a meek, abused person who's hiding in the corner. We're talking about a brave, courageous character who was teaching men and women the legal aspects of their religion. Had all the opportunity in the world to say this person did X, Y, Z to me, treated me badly. We don't see anything like that. So we see the opposite. And so what he's doing is projecting his own experiences and insecurities that he had when he was growing up onto someone else he thinks is in the same position, but that's just really wishful thinking. But a lot of it is I'm going to be as rude and as aggressive as I can. Let me trigger this person. Let me put them in their place in a way to try and upset the apple cart. So whatever argument you put forward, you're bringing it forward from a defensive position or a flustered position. And that didn't happen. And I think he looked bad in this. He came across very vulgar. And a lot of the comments that I'd noted, they were saying, "Oh, he wasn't really as a host as he should have been." You've got someone on and you bring them on and you're interviewing them. There's got to be a certain amount of decorum. And like Brother Jordan was saying, decorum is if anything can be a British value, that's going to be one. And he didn't show that. In fact, he showed himself to be insecure and aggressive, and he thought that was a good look, and I don't think it was. And he didn't win any arguments, in my perspective, on that. All he showed was that, this was something that we would today find shocking. And that's what he was able to say. And he was trying to retrospectively apply that backwards.
As he become more flustered.
Yeah.
And I could see I could see his face, because I'm face to face with him almost, aren't I? I could see his eyes, and his face was red, and I was getting more confident, because I was thinking to myself, he's rattled here, he's got himself rattled, and I knew that he'd be, he wouldn't be, because when you're angry like that, or you don't think straight, you don't talk straight, you kind of you sort of you put your foot in it. So as the more it was quite strange, because the more sort of angry he got or frustrated he got, the more confident I got. I felt like I've got a bit of control here now, what I mean? I'm talking more than he is, I'm answering questions, he don't like it, he's interrupting, I'm stopping him from interrupting and telling him that I'm answering it in my way. And I felt more confident as it was strange, because the more he got angry, the more confident I got. I thought, okay. I think if I would have got angry, he would have just sat back and there you go, he's angry. I got him.
The point here is, and it's a really important point, I think, because Liam's argument is, I condemn all of it, it's all wrong, but he never gave any reasons as to why it's wrong. Okay? Now, Dowie, can you imagine, right? You're driving, say, in the year 2000 down a particular road at 40 miles an hour, okay? Mm-hmm. Because that is the speed limit for that road that has been set on that road, okay? 10 years later, Dowie, the speed limit on that road falls to 20 miles per hour.
Yeah.
According to Liam, everyone who drove at 40 miles an hour 10 years ago should get a speeding ticket.
But he would answer that see how, if you give that analogy to someone like Liam, he would say, well, driving a car down the road isn't the same as blah 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 in the 9-year-old.
Nobody's saying it's the same, but what we're presenting here is a principle, and the principle is that the law of the land of the time and the social, because look, Liam says he's an atheist, right?
He says that, yeah.
Even though he's been christened apparently in the Jordan River or whatever it was, right? But let's just say, let's say for argument, sorry.
Nothing to do with me.
No. Exactly, nothing to do with you, Jordan. That could be quite a Jordan River. That could be quite weird. Anyway, so he's been apparently christened, but let's say for argument's sake, he is an atheist. Okay, the atheistic paradigm is that social consensus governs morality. So whatever the society deem reasonable at the time, it governs morality. Now, where it does not, where the caveat is where things have been universally agreed throughout history, throughout time to be wrong. Those don't change. So murdering an innocent person, killing a child, thieving, all of that sort of stuff. That has been universally accepted and agreed upon by the absolute majority of people to be immoral. So those things are pretty much set in stone. Then there are lots of cultural things. Age of marriage, for example. These are to do with culture, life expectancy. If you're going to die at 25, 26, 27 years old, even if you cut your finger or have an infection or something, you will be dead in a month or whatever, right? So those laws, when it comes to cultural sensibilities, when it comes to age of marriage and these things, are decided upon by social consensus. The people get together and they say, right, because we've got this life expectancy, this education level, this readiness, this. When a girl reaches, when she's pubescent, that is our marker that it's okay for her to then get married, as long as the father agrees that she's mature enough, old enough, large enough, big enough, she'll be able to, take on that responsibility. She's been readied for that responsibility, right? Her family are involved. The culture is involved, okay? So Liam's paradigm, you see, is that is what governs morality. But what he wants to do is he wants his cake and he wants to eat it. He wants to say, even though that is generally how morality is worked out, for this particular issue, I'm going to judge it completely differently. Well, for me, who cares what you think? quite frankly. Just because you make up something that you want it to be that way does not make it true.
Yeah.
And that's the point. So even if you look at social sciences, social sciences, basically, they call this, they often call it retrospective moral judgment or moral anachronism. Okay. It's presentism. It's applying the social norms of society today, life expectancy, education level, readiness, all of those things, and then applying those retrospectively. It would be tantamount to you driving on a road at 40 miles per hour, and then because 10 years later the speed limit has dropped to 20 miles per hour, that all of the people that drove at 40, even though it was legal to do so at that time, should now be condemned to having a speeding ticket. From an atheistic paradigm, that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's saying. Ijaz, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think in general, he was duplicitous throughout the episode. I mean, if I were to just put this on the screen here, there's an entire notice that has to pop up every time Brother Dowie makes a legitimate point. Right, so if those of you who can't see the screen right now, there is a literal pop-up that reads, though presented as fact, the guesses, claims, and statistics are contested, and in many cases incorrect. Please verify independently and hit the comments.
Why didn't he tell us which ones? Why didn't he, put up exactly what the stats are? And, why didn't... Do you know what I mean?
Not once. Not once does he do that. But it feels like one of those what do you call it? Those warnings that you would get for like nicotine ads, right? That pop up that would happen. I just find it interesting that you mentioned something very peculiar, Brother Dowie, which is Liam himself did not seem to have researched any of the questions he was asking you.
No.
He had zero statistics at the ready, zero references from the Home Office, no newspaper headlines to go by, nothing. And so he's left the bulk of the work to verify you to be done by the audience, who he knows is not going to do that in any case.
Disrespect the audience.
Right. So he knows what he's getting away with, right? And the thing is, I think he does make a value judgment if I put that back up on the screen, because he does say the guesses claims in many cases are incorrect, right? So he's making a claim that your arguments and your data, they're false, but he doesn't have a citation for that, not one single example. And I found that to be utterly ridiculous.
It might be wrong. Yeah, it might be wrong what you say.
You know what it is, Jordan? It's very easy when you are, you've capitulated, you've lost the argument, you're on the floor, you're lying there, you've got your last breath, and then you just point your finger and say, "You liar, you're a liar, you're a liar." And that's what he's basically done. He himself presented information that was grossly inaccurate.
Yeah.
Grossly inaccurate. It goes completely against all the data that we have now. But because it works and because his comment section love that sort of thing, he just decided to sort of spout that out as if like somehow it's true. It's complete lies. And we're going to go through those anyway. Now, obviously, we've taken quite a long time on the age of Aisha. Because it was, let's face it, it was a good, I think, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Dowie,
I think it was at least 20 minutes. I tried to, yeah.
Let's get the next question. But
in my defense, brother, I did promise him in the video where I called him out, I'd give him such a comprehensive answer, he wouldn't ask it again.
Yeah, but then he didn't want a comprehensive.
I only did what I said I was going to do.
Yeah, but he didn't want that, because obviously that then makes him look as if he's not done any homework and has no argument, and that's the problem. When these people get exposed, what they try to do then is just simply spout out nonsense in order to try to win the argument. But anyway, let's look at the next clip.
Just before you even today, there is not an agreement on a standard single age amongst the countries of the world. The age range is from 12 to 20 or 21. And depending on where you are in the world, it's different. Now, Oh, so this is today. We're talking about today. Angola and Philippines, it's around 12. If you go to countries like Japan, South Korea, it's 13. And then if you go into sort of European, African and countries like Albania, Australia, Bulgaria, you're talking about 14. That's Portugal, Hungary, Italy, all of these countries come into that. Then when you get to France and Poland, Denmark, then you start to see 15. And then 16 is probably the most common probably around the world. And then when you get to 17, 18 above is most Muslim countries, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, interestingly, isn't it? And then 8 and above. So, for example, in America, you can get married and be with somebody who's 18 years old, but they can't actually drink alcohol until they're 21. I don't know which is more important, more of a responsible decision. And then you've got parts of America where you can still marry it. There's no lower age limit. As long as there's parental consent, there's no lower age limit for marriage. And in today's world, the places where there's most marriages we would consider underage marriages is in America because of these laws. States without lower age limits, it's just the consent of the parents that is required, and you can marry. And we have big age discrepancies in being married together, and no one raises that as an issue for those societies. And in today's world,
and also the major point here, actually, Imran, is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he gave the ruling about marriage, there were numerous things that have to be considered. We're not saying today girls should get married at 9 years old, because that would be going against what the Prophet taught us. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us, first of all, we have the hadith that underlines pretty much every ruling that is made. You're not permitted to harm yourself, and you're not permitted to harm anyone else. So any ruling that's given, if there is a potential for harm, psychological harm, physical harm, you're not permitted to engage in that activity, regardless of what it is. So that would be the underlying assumption that's always made. That's the axiom by which the rulings are made. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that she has to be physically ready, mentally ready. So, and he said the society, the culture has to accept and be taken into consideration. Now, why did the Prophet say that? Why did the Prophet, peace be upon him, say the culture of the people? Because, as you've just pointed out, Imran, you might have people living in the Amazon jungle. Okay, they have different needs, different norms. They have different life expectancies, different education levels. They may be brought up in a situation that's completely different from our children that are brought up in England, for example.
You know what, Abbas? You've read, well, most people have read Romeo and Juliet at school, right?
Yeah.
So in Romeo and Juliet, how old is Juliet?
No idea. You tell me.
She's 13.
Okay.
It says it in the text, right? But why is that? Because in Elizabethan England, you can legally marry from 12 with parental consent, and married to 13 was like, fine. It's fine. Yeah. Now the whole point here is that that's basically a really fundamental British work talking about this sort of this relationship between these people, and one of them and the girl in this is 13. So you're going to call Charles Dickens a pedophile?
Yeah, but the thing is, Imran, you know what it is with people like Liam. What he will say is, yeah, they're all pedophiles. Yeah, they're all nonsense. They're all like this. But the point is, just because you think so doesn't make it true. Do you see what I mean? Just
so this is the absurdity. This is the absurdity. So he's basically would be agreeing that British culture, apart from the last 200 years, has been a culture that exploits young people pedophilic in a pedophilic way.
He would, I don't know.
He would say that 100%.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is, Dowie? I think my personal view is, unless you can anchor that with a reasoned argument, other than it feels wrong, it looks wrong, and I'm going to just make some emotional arguments to make it look wrong, so my viewers will like that. Unless you can substantiate that, then quite frankly, it's just your view, and your view is irrelevant, quite frankly, as is quite frankly all of our views here, unless we can back it up in a reasoned way with evidence, with a history of social dynamics, social studies, and what have you, and how these things are viewed by experts generally, psychologists. I mean, for example, if you look at the psychologist Leslie Hazelton, I think she's a Jew. She said, if you look at the life of Aisha radiallahu anha, what you find psychologically, because she's a psychologist, she says she's a brave, courageous, outgoing, very outspoken, opinionated, strong woman. She's not some little withering petal who was like, went through some sort of abuse or trauma or whatever. Quite the contrary. And so, at the end of the day, as I say, if you're going to make emotional arguments, you cannot win an argument on emotion unless you're prepared to engage your brain and not your heart. You're never going to be able to, unfortunately, get any sense out of any subject. But people today do, unfortunately, operate by feelings. My feelings tell me it's wrong, therefore it's wrong. Well, you know what? Maybe you need to look at your brain rather than your feelings. But in any case, let's move to the next clip. Otherwise, we've already been on this clip for nearly an hour. But we probably spent a long time on this clip because fundamentally it was a large section of the contention that he kept coming up with. Ponders, if you want to very quickly make an argument, 30 seconds, in relation to the age of Aisha, then we...
Yusuf, you're right.
Yusuf. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I think you've pretty much covered everything, and I can never say anything in 30 seconds. So
anyway, okay, that's true. That is very true. Ijaz, let's get the next clip up, and then we'll start with you, Yusuf.
In this time, in this day and age, just like there's lots of things that were relevant then that are not relevant now. So you have an understanding here that we have to follow the Prophet Muhammad in everything. Is that how you think we have to do it?
So my understanding is that a Muslim perceives the Prophet Muhammad as the perfect person.
Yeah.
And to be the perfect person and the perfect Muslim, they have to emulate him.
Yes.
So that's the truth.
No, not completely. Okay. So we have to copy him and emulate him, as you say, in issues of belief and issues of religion. Okay, that's it. It's conditioned to belief and religion. When it comes to customs and traditions, we have our own. There's encouraged allowance for customs and traditions of people from different places. Okay, so it was a custom or tradition back then to do that. Okay, not just amongst them, but many of them. Okay, nowadays it's not. So you don't follow them in these things. Like I say, there's certain things that the Prophet peace be upon him used to eat. We don't have to eat them. You know what I'm saying? As long as it's halal. So like I may like a Sunday roast. Well, I do like a Sunday roast. It was just cultural. So in issues of belief and issues of religious, then yes. But issues of culture and tradition, then no. We have our own culture and own tradition. I'm dressed as similar to you. I'm dressed in a t-shirt and tracksuit bottoms. I don't dress like an Arab, okay? And I'll never do. Occasionally, if I go to the mosque on Eid or something, I might, because it's easier and it's white. But the only time we wouldn't follow our traditions is if the tradition contradicted the religion, like it was traditional for us to drink alcohol. Okay, fine. Then I can't do that. Okay, so, but everything else is fine. As long as there's no contradiction to the religion, then it's fine to have your traditions and have your cultures. And yeah.
So you make a very, very important distinction there. Ponders, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so I think a part of the issue is they're looking at Sharia law in the same way they look at British law. So with British law, you've got this arbitrary age, and it's like, well, we're just not British law, like modern law. And even then, there's no consensus. Like you probably mentioned this in the discussion. Yeah. Like in the UK, it's 16. You can marry younger with parental consent. If you go to Korea, it's 21. You go to Japan, it's 12. If you go to X, Y, and Z,
it's different ages. Yeah.
So the question is which one of the modern arbitrary numbers is the right arbitrary number? Firstly, but again, it's like the reason they pick a number is for ease when it comes to applying this in a legal court case. It's easier just to apply this number, which doesn't make sense when you look at individuals, because it's like, okay, so this person, 15 years, 370 other days, and 23 hours and 59 minutes, they're illegal, and then the next minute it's okay. Like there's a huge difference between them in them 60 seconds. There isn't. It just helps the law apply cases in a more simple manner, number one. Number two, again, they apply an age, and that's not how it's applied in the Sharia. You've got the conditions, which are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you've mentioned them already. So the idea of not causing harm, of them having to have been physically mature, mentally mature, they consent, the family around them and the community around them consent. And then there's urf, which you sort of mentioned as well, which is the way of the people. Now, what they talk, and they say this when they ask, would you marry your daughter at 9? The idea is that they don't understand that we have this concept of urf, and that it's not fard or obligatory for you to have to marry your daughter at any particular age. It's when you feel like they are ready. And even within the Sharia, there could be cases where you have an 18-year-old who would not be considered ready for marriage because they maybe don't fit all of the criteria. And maybe the community, when they see it, they don't feel as though that person is ready for marriage. The people, the walis, the people that are they're looking after them, may not consider that person ready. And so, according to the Sharia, an 18-year-old would not be ready for marriage because it's all of these conditions. And what they say is, but yours is supposed to be a law that applies to all time. Well, it is. It's more so than yours because with the arbitrary age, that might not apply to all times and all places. It's just a fixed age, which happens to coincide with the end of public education. And there's a lot of cases to make that the reason it's the age that it is because they don't want it to interfere with public education, not necessarily because they're not engaging in that type of behavior. Because in that public education, in year 7, they give them sex education. I remember in year 7, they were teaching us how to put condoms on bananas. They were teaching us about the pill.
So how are you supposed to, Ponders, how are you supposed to eat the banana like that then?
I don't think anyone did after that, but the point is that
just to let the people know, because we've got international viewers as well. When you say year 7, how old are you at that point?
Yeah, so you're about 10, and keep in mind that's round about the age that they split primary school from high school. Why? Right. Because that's around the age where people start to develop, they start having feelings for the opposite gender, they start getting interested in that type of behavior, and then they teach you in high school that type of behavior is normal. They show you how to do it safely. They show you how to use contraception, how to use the pill, what abortions are, how to engage in a behavior. And they constantly reiterate, it's normal, it's normal, it's normal, it's normal. While at the same time, the law says that you can't engage in that until you're 16, that you can't legally consent. So like the idea of them being taught that it's okay and this is how you do it, while at the same time telling the world they can't consent to it, there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance there. Then furthermore, it's the whole point, I guess, just to sort of summarize without rambling too much, is that there is urf according to this, and 9 isn't the limit. It's not like, okay, they're 9, now they've got to get married. That's not how it works. It could be 16, it could be 18, it could be 20, it could be 30. It could be whatever it is. There's another really good argument from Asdullah al-Andalusi. He wrote a paper on this with, I think it was the Yaqeen Institute, but he talks about how like things change over time. Now, let's say you go into the future and technology advances so much that the average life increases from 80. The average lifespan for men and women is around 80 something. Yeah. That it doubles. And let's say they make the working environment becomes so complex that the compulsory education system also doubles. So not only do you finish school at 16, but now you've got to do a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. And they move the age of consent to 32 because everything's doubled. The lifespan is doubled, so people are living to 160 years old. The public compulsory education system is doubled, so you have to go into education until you're 32. They push this whole thing about your prefrontal cortex not developing properly until you're 25. And then they say, and you need another 7 years of education to understand the gravity of consent and all of these things. And that's going to be included in your PhD education. And they say, okay, so now, because people live much longer, we can extend dependency or childhood to 32. And anyone under the age of 32 is considered a child. That's not inconceivable because that's exactly what happened already to today. Like prior to the 20th century, you were considered a man when you hit puberty. You got taken to the pub, you had your first pint, and they took you to the mines. Now you have to contribute. You've got to start paying your way. You're not going to continue to be a dependent because we've got bills to pay. We need food on the table. You need to start not just taking resources, you need to provide them. And that was the case, not just in the UK, but around the world. It was, and you can check that historically. It was when you hit puberty and the environment led to them understanding and sort of forcing them into maturing quicker. Whereas the current environment, we infantilize them. We put them in uniforms. We put them in cages with these big walls around them and, you know, these big fences. We treat them or patronize them and treat them like children. And then we have this clear distinction between them, the pupils, and the teacher who wears a suit. This environment affects how we view these people. And we know it does because the same people, if you put them in a different environment, they blend. Like when I was in high school, my brother was in year 9. So he was about 13. I was in year 11, about 15, 16. So I'm older than him. Yet he could go into a shop and he would get served for alcohol. And I wouldn't. They'd ask me for ID, being 16. I'm 2 years away from 18. And he was much younger than me, but he was like a man size. His voice dropped really quickly. And no one questioned it. So he could go in and out of that shop.
Just going to clarify that. That's before you accepted Islam, just in case that people
of course.
People start saying, "Oh
no,
my
exactly.
God,
I became a Muslim when I was 24.
Yeah.
So
listen,
this
guys,
before
it was before he was Muslim. So please, just don't start putting comments in. Alcohol is haram. You know, please don't do that.
I know.
Anyway.
But there was also there's probably, if you all went into the same education as I did, you probably had girls in your year that went to nightclubs while they were in high school. They would get themselves dolled up and they would be able to get in, and the bouncer would not bat an eyelid and not ask them a question. And they would go into these environments, they would drink alcohol, they would blend, they would probably have people hitting on them, and no one in that environment is batting an eye. And they could spend the whole night out and come back and talk about it the next day. And the reason is because sorry, is someone talking?
No, just finish your point, and Yusuf, quickly.
Yeah, so the whole point is that the environment shapes the way we view individuals. You put them in an environment, in the school uniform, you patronize them, you talk to them like children, you treat them like children, they act like children, and then, you know, you that's how you see them, so you perceive them. When you put them in a different environment, it completely changes the way that you interact with these individuals. Like my brother, you would never have guessed. If he was in a pub, drinking a pint, playing pool, you just look at him as a man because he was bigger. He was,
Brother Yusuf, that's valid, mashallah, very valid point. Ijaz, you want to quickly add a point? I want to get Dowie.
Just quickly, bitches. We just finished Carnival. I think the first night of Ramadan. I think we finished Carnival the day before. And if people don't know what Carnival is, just give me like a minute to explain it. It's a 2-day festival, which we actually have over 5 days, but we call it 2. And for 2 days, you get drunk from 3 a.m. on Monday morning to 12 a.m. on Wednesday night. Okay? So you get drunk, you do drugs, and you go from one party to the next. The streets are closed, and people consume alcohol. They wear practically nothing. No one is stopping anyone asking for ID cards. Just to be clear, no one's doing that. They hand out free beers along the dance route that we have. You have people doing acts with each other in public, which by all standards should be illegal, and it's allowed. So what I say to people is, even today with my own country, you have a negative example of lewd and promiscuous behavior being allowed by a modern government that you should find immoral, yet we have visitors from all over the world coming to take part in it.
Ijaz, what were those dates again?
I'll text you. I'll definitely text you and let you know.
Dowie, you made a very poignant point there, which was the same point the same question that he actually gotcha did on the previous Muslim guests, which was, is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the best example for you? Are you supposed to emulate and copy everything that the Prophet did? And of course they answered yes. which in reality, of course, they probably understood it as religious. But you actually made that very important distinction. And I think that was a very powerful point, actually, that was clarified. That wasn't done before.
Which I think I got from you.
Yeah, don't worry about where you got it from.
but it's important because even though I was sitting in the hot seat, as it were, there was a lot of information that I gathered from you brothers and some from Dilly Hussein as well, that without having that, I wouldn't have done it. It would have been a different story. So no doubt about it. No, it would have been 100%. You know, I was making dua a lot, asking Allah to help me, and asking Allah to bring me the people to help me, because obviously Allah's just not going to reveal a book to you to help you, so He's going to bring people to you to help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is what I was. So certain things that we were having in discussions and we were being said, one-on-one calls and group chats, they just managed to lodge in their head enough. So when I needed them, they could pop out at the right time, you know. Because otherwise, I probably would have answered it the same as everyone else. Yes,
but to be honest, Dowie, you know, that's how we all learn, and
yeah,
to be
that's
honest,
how we learn. Yeah.
Knowledge is, alhamdulillah, what Allah gives us, and Allah inspires us, and everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dr. Imran, it's an important distinction, isn't it? People try to have this sort of gotcha moment when it comes to emulating and copying everything the Prophet Muhammad did, but obviously the Prophet himself made a distinction between his views on things or his cultural norms and the religious matters, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many examples. The example when he was Prophet was with I think it was Khalid bin Walid, and they were out in a part of the desert where they used to eat lizards, and so someone had made a lizard for them, and a dub it was called, and the Prophet sort of didn't want to eat it, and Khalid bin Walid, I think it's Khalid bin Walid, asked him, is it halal, or is it that you just don't like to eat it? And he said, no, it's not haram. You can eat it, but I just don't like to eat it. And he said, and he described this like I ate it looking at him, like I finished the whole thing off looking at him because I was waiting for him, Prophet to tell me not to do that. And we know the Prophet didn't like onions, for example, particularly before going to prayer. There were lots of these things, and there was a group that took advice from the Prophet peace be upon him about planting, I think, a certain crop, and it didn't do well. And then they complained to the Prophet peace be upon him. He said, "Look, I'm just when it comes to these things, I'm just a person. You can take my advice or you can leave my advice." So there's that distinction was made even in the life of the Prophet peace be upon him, when we distinguish between religious matters and non-religious matters. Yeah. But I love the context that Brother Yusuf put on the actual dynamics of the society that we're in. It belies this idea that we have an actual agreed upon age, be it of consent or be it of marriage, because the reality is that even the society is hypersexualized, and we see that promotion of that even in the youth, even from a schooling perspective onwards, and their access to sort of higher age men or women when they're very, very young is something that's encouraged and happens actively. So I like that distinction, because then you've got to then say the society that is teaching under 16s to partake in sexual intercourse in a safe way, is that a paedophilic society? And then is that how we would then describe our current society that we're in? Because that's exactly what's happening. And I'm sure at that stage then he'd have to withdraw it, or he'd have to go on a campaign to prevent young children from being taught these things. And the reality is what would happen is, and the reason these are taught is because we see a huge rise in underage intercourse resulting in pregnancies, resulting in devastated lives, which is why these things are put into place in the first place. That's the sort of solution. The solution we're being provided for these underage pregnancies is, let's teach them how to do it safely. That's not the same as preventing this thing from happening because it's morally wrong or ethically wrong. In fact, they're saying this is inevitable. Let's find a solution. And the solution is let's teach them how to do it without becoming.
And the fact, Imran, is that if you teach very young kids how to have sex safely, and you give them sex education, and I'm not saying you shouldn't give them basic sex education, biology, but when it comes to showing them, movies and these things of people actually doing the act, and then showing them how to use contraception and all of these things, basically what you're doing is effectively facilitating a particular way of lifestyle, which is going to encourage promiscuity, which is going to encourage having sex early. And the chances are, as Yusuf has pointed out, a lot of these very young girls at 13 and 14, it's true. They end up in bars and pubs and clubs, dolled up, because sometimes, a girl for 13 or 14 can, she could be 5'8", and she can look like she's like 19 or something. And what happens is, when drink and alcohol and drugs and all these things are also involved, there's going to be, very evil, going on, and that's the point, right? Yusuf, if you want to just quickly make your point before we get the next clip in, inshallah. Jordan,
it also happens the other way around as well, where there can be people over the age of 18 that don't look 18 at all.
Yeah.
And from an Islamic perspective, it might not be okay for them to engage in a marriage, or so these things have to be taken into consideration. So I remember I was making a point about the universality of it, and then I sort of got sidetracked. So they'll make the claim your law is supposed to be for all mankind at all times, and they state because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ married Aisha radiallahu anha when they got married, that that means that ours isn't, because we're saying that you don't have to do that now. Now that's not true. The law literally includes flexibility, which is the urf, the way of the people, and because it's not setting a particular age, that is exactly what makes it universalizable. That is exactly what allows for a community, like for example in the UK, to set limits and say, okay, we're not going to allow anyone under the age of 16
because our girls are not ready now.
Yeah, because the conditions keep them dependent for longer. We, as a society, we don't see people under that age as being mature, because, and this is the thing, dependency and independency in terms of reliance upon the family, that is something that can affect maturity and how you view people. For example, I know people that are like 25 years old that have never moved out of their parents' house, rely completely on their mother. They've never paid bills. They don't contribute at all. The mum still cooks for them, cleans their underpants. Like they're not men at all in any way, shape, or form.
Cooks their underpants? Did you just say?
The protection of being exploited from an age perspective for somebody's gratification, the protection from that is that you only allow anything to happen within the framework of marriage, because marriage gives protection. That's the whole point of it. And if that's conducted then with the understanding that the people who are looking after this person agree that this person is now ready for marriage, according to whatever that cultural norm is, that's the protection is really powerful. So yes, our child is our child is now no longer a child and they're ready for marriage. We would like to get them married. They could be 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever age, because this flexibility is there, as Brother Yusuf was saying. The best way for then that to take place is within the protection of a marriage. And the whole point here is that the society denigrates marriage. Multiple girlfriends.
And not only that, exploitation. They're like, no, don't get married until you're over 30. Like, live your life, be promiscuous, do this, do that. And like, they're literally telling people from a very early age, in a very systemic manner, to just not commit. And then what happens is they're training them not to be husbands and wives. They're training them to be single, to be like incapable of long-term commitment. Because if you've spent 30 years of your life just drifting from relationship to relationship, and it's obviously there's always exceptions to the rules. We're not saying this is the case for everyone, but it becomes very, very difficult to like lock down. There's also this sort of fairy tale mentality about what love is, and this whole idea of love at first sight. People, I think, today more than ever, confuse lust for love. And what they do is they see someone, they desire them, and they think that desire is itself love. And then they get together, and that as it does with every relationship, in time, the puppy love stage wears off. Things become normal because you become used to each other. That excitement, because of the unknown in the early parts of the relationship, taper off. And what happens is they get bored. But then I think the modern person interprets that as falling out of love as well. And they don't associate love with knowing, something that develops as you get to know someone, something that persists even into boredom. And so you have now even this sort of modern idea of just, I don't think I love him anymore. It doesn't feel the same as it used to. And so they'll just move on and they'll look for another partner. And this is a huge problem in modern times with men and women, where they have high body counts. Like there's a lot of people that they've engaged in relationships.
Well, there is a stat that a woman that's been promiscuous before marriage is 80% likely to be dissatisfied with her husband, and if she has kept herself to herself and has been chaste, then she's 80% likely to be content with her husband. So, and that probably the same thing applies for men as well. If you've had loads of women, any little tiff, any little problem, anything, you're going to probably be, back on Tinder or whatever it was that, your shopping list of where you were going. Anyway, but I think we've really knocked this one out of the park. There's not really very much to say. Jordan, you haven't said very much. Before we get to the next clip, did you want to add anything at all?
Yeah, I think you brothers have put a lot of points in. I think Dowie answered it great as well in the podcast. I guess the bit I'd add is, and it's hard, isn't it, when you speak to someone like Liam, and we've all probably done it at Speaker's Corner or whatever, they're talking about the age of Aisha like it's some geezer down the park that's met some girl. Like, we're looking at it as a prophet of God that's received revelations. We're looking at marriages that were done to bring tribes together. We're not looking at, for some reason in their porn addicted mind, it's like they just can't get out of their head that it's like dirty old man. And so it's really hard. I mean, all of this stuff about presentism and understanding that, all species, when they hit puberty, are reproducing, understanding all these things about kids, you need to have some kind of intellectual ability to have a conversation, which Liam didn't. He wasn't going to accept any of that. But ultimately, I just want to discuss make the point about the different paradigm, which Dowie did mention. He did talk about that this was a marriage that was through revelation. This wasn't someone going out the pub and meeting a bird. And when they talk about it, even with the FTC, they, in their mind, because remember, we're talking about a marriage. They're only talking about sex. They're only talking. And
you're talking about Jordan, our families involved, the culture.
Yeah. So why are they not worried about Aisha, living in someone's house? Then why are they not worried about her, in terms of the marriage itself? They're only worried about that sexual act because that's all that's on their mind.
Okay.
You do mention, I think that we have a point from Liam where he makes a claim that I don't think is correct. So let's listen at it really quickly.
And stuff like this. It's not true.
Okay, let me bring it to modern times. So if you lived in Sudan and the legal age of consent is 10, so put it out there, I find that fucking appalling. You're mid-50s.
So I'm not sure. Is it the case, brothers, that
Not true.
You looked it up? So this is not true. And the way he said it was as if he said it with so much confidence. Can I replay that? Because he thought he had a got your statistic. Let's just hear it again.
Age of consent is 10. So put it out there, I find that fucking appalling. You're mid-50s.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I mean, he's not arguing from a reasonable point there. He's making up statistics on the go. And for a second there, Jordan, I have to be honest, I thought that was a transition that you were doing.
We'll revert to ginger. That's well, I've got a ginger cat, so.
Mashallah. So, okay, let me go to the other point.
So has anybody done the research on whether in Sudan the legal age of marriage?
I checked it out. It was 18.
18.
18. And remember, it's not an age of age of sex. It's an age of marriage.
Okay.
And I think historically, there's been cases when it was puberty. So you may have had some 10-year-old cases. But it's never been the age of consent as 10, is from what I. And if you look now, anyone can check. It's 18.
Okay. Just so I'm not making a mistake, is the age in Sudan and South Sudan the same, or is it that they have different ages? Because they're two different countries.
Somebody can Google it. Somebody can Google it or put it on ChatGPT.
South Sudan seems to be 18, and let me just check.
Have a quick check. But Dowie, I don't think you obviously you're not going to go there knowing all of the stats and everything. But the way he put it out to you was as if it's 100% concrete. In Sudan, it's 10, and that's disgusting, But it doesn't appear to be actually accurate. No. I don't think.
So, but I'm not going to Sudan. Like I said, I did say you may find some countries like Afghanistan, where the age is different, but most Muslim countries are 18. Most Muslim countries with a government. At the minute, Sudan doesn't have a government. It has two militia fractions at war.
That's true.
But this is my point, you see, and this is why I feel very strongly, and why I get irritated, really visceral irritation, when I see people like Liam, because they're prepared to lie and make stuff up just to win an argument.
But I reckon Abbas, he's probably just heard that. You know, maybe Tommy said it, or someone said it on social media.
He's heard it. Yeah, he's heard it. That's
heard that somewhere.
But you know what it is, Jordan, right? We're living in a world now where clearly there is a fanning of the flames of the far right against minorities, against people who are migrants, against people who've emigrated to this country, and in particular to Muslims, right? And so when you are prepared to share what amounts to lies and deception, you are part of the problem. You are fueling that hatred, and you know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said very, very clearly that what you say, you will be held accountable for. It's very, very important. And if your words harm a people, harm somebody, harm their reputation, it's a very serious crime within Islam. And you know, Jordan, I don't know if you remember, we did that. We did that interview with. Sorry.
Presumed guilty, that one.
Yeah, presumed guilty, you know, the assistant professor Todd Green, right? And in his book, in the beginning of his book, there's a Rabbi Herschel, and he says, words make worlds. So all of these people, you see, and the reason why he said that is because what happened to the Jews in Germany started with words. And then what they said is that these people were, they were taking over. These people, the Jews, were, you know, this is what the accusations were, that the Jews were taking over. They want our women. They're raping our women. They're after our girls. They're after our women. These are exactly the same things, that they are a danger to our society. They're a danger to us. This is how it started, you see. And so Rabbi Herschel said, words make worlds, because it does matter what you say. And Liam has got a very big following, okay? So if he's prepared to share lies and deception, then he is part of the problem that's creating hate and division within a community, which is our community, right? We're all part of England. We all live here, many of us are born here. Obviously, Ijaz, you're not from here, but all of us are basically born here. We're from here, right? Now, the point is, so it does matter that if you're not prepared to do a little bit of homework and check the things that you're going to say, then quite frankly, you are involved in deception, just like like all the other, nut jobs out there.
But do you think that they know that they're being played? I don't think that they know they're being played. I think they are the players.
Well, I think sometimes what happens, you know, when you have so many lies, and unfortunately you start then perpetuating those lies just because you've heard something somewhere mentioned. You start literally believing lies to be true. I mean, he said it with such confidence as if he knew what he was talking about. Yet it was absolute rubbish.
But do you think that the lies that they genuinely spout and the misinformation and do you think that I'm not sure that they realize that they're on the wrong side of history here. I don't think that I think they think that they are the bastions of, you know, the last defenders of the realm and the
Dowie,
last defenders of British.
Care. I'll be honest with you, Dowie. I don't think they care. I think this is just a way of packy bashing done on the stealth mode. That's all it is. It's packy bashing on stealth mode, because you can attack Islam because it's a religion and it's not a people, even though most Muslims are brown. Let's put it that way, okay? And so for me, it's just what I saw in the 70s and what I saw in the 80s. For them, all people of color were horrid and dangerous. For the new lot, I think that's what it is.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is a very large portion of the population in every community that has a tendency towards black and white thinking. It's the same type of thinking you get with football teams. Like people really do associate with their team, quote unquote, and they find it very difficult to think about nuance. And it's just, we wear this t-shirt, you wear that other t-shirt, we're the good guys, you're the bad guys. And it's a very simple type of thinking, and a lot of people fall into it. So I don't think that it's something that necessarily all people can help. They get dragged along like a stick in the water, and if everyone around them is sort of saying the same thing, they're looking for things that make people different. Before there was large immigration, it wasn't that this didn't exist, it just existed in a different way. In Europe, for example, like prior to there being large immigrants from places where there was obvious differences in skin color, the big schism was Catholics versus Protestant. Like you get that not that long ago, even in Ireland. Yeah. And it was what makes us different. The same kind of us versus them mentality. They wear this t-shirt, we that. Like literally in Ireland, like the division was even associated to football teams. Like if you were a Celtic fan, you were a Catholic. If you were Protestant, you were a Rangers fan. And like if you walked into a Protestant area wearing a Celtic t-shirt, you could get beat up. And like it's not like it's sort of like,
is it tribalism?
Yeah, but it's very, very, it's reactionary. There's like I don't know how to describe it, but there's a similar thing now where it's like people just, things are bad or things are hard, things are stressful. There's certain things that are going on, and it's very complex. Like why are prices so high? And like people like to think they have these very valuable insights into complex matters. They'll look at something, they think of one possibility, but because that's the first thing that pops into their head, they think it must be right. It happens all the time. And like, I think a lot of people do this. And so when they're looking, it's like a conspiracy theory mindset. So at the moment, there's a lot of issues that the general white British population is dealing with. They can't quite figure it out properly because it's difficult to figure out like, exactly what's going on. And anyone that really looks at it should be able to say that these issues are very complex. Like this isn't something you could just look at and go, I know the answer. Like you've got to do a bit of digging to figure that out. And most people are not. Most people are watching football, watching Coronation Street, watching crap. Like these are the things that are popular. It's not deep documentaries into the financial economic situation in the UK. Like they're not educating themselves. They're entertaining themselves instead. And yet they're very, very opinionated. Like even with the whole EU thing, Brexit. I was studying philosophy at the time when the whole Brexit thing was coming up. And then it was like, you've got the choice. And I was trying to look into it. And I did not know what the right answer was. I'd spent time trying to figure that out. I was trying to read articles about it, see what different analysts were saying. And there was so much. It was like, this is too complicated. I couldn't vote in or out because I didn't feel confident enough to make the right decision. But then I would speak to people and they would just reduce it to very, very simple things. Like, oh, we need to get out of EU because we need to get rid of immigration. And then the very next year after the Brexit, we had the highest rates of immigration we'd ever had in our life. Yeah. It went up. It nearly doubled. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it went up directly after Brexit. So the main thing that people were voting Brexit for didn't even occur. It got worse. So so they obviously didn't understand the issues at hand or whether or not making that decision was actually going to have the effects that they were hoping for. It was just, it's this very simple thinking. Even the whole was pushing it, oversimplified it, and made it a us versus them thing. And obviously, there's a lot of controversy around that subject. So I'm not making a judgment on what was the right decision because I don't.
350 million pound a day to the EU that the NHS could use instead. Wasn't that the figure given by
on a weekly basis.
Yeah, they were using all these
Weekly?
statistics, and then it never got spent on the NHS.
No.
Imran, how much was the figure? It was 350 million.
I think I read it on the side of a bus with Boris standing in front of it. 350 million a week or something like that. But there's a great book that Jordan recommended to me called The Crowd, Study of the Popular Mind by Gustave Le Bon. It just talks about how, and if a lot of the tactics you mentioned by the so one of the things is something called emotional contagion. And what that means is that if a lot of people in groups share the same information, they put their attention to the same thing, and what happens is they share an emotion in that, and then when their reasoning becomes secondary to their mood. So basically, they're all angry about something, and everyone gets angry about it. And you should be angry about this. Oh yeah, I need to be more angry about this, and everyone's just getting angry. And then about what? You go, well, whatever he's talking about. I don't even know what the nuances is. And one of the things is the more simple and confident assertions there are, so less nuance, the easier it's just to follow them. Yeah. And the nuance actually takes you've got to calm your emotion down to engage your thinking part of your brain, and that's why it happens a lot. So simplicity, like clear binaries and they're very very non-nuanced ideas. They're very easily taken, and the thing that happens a lot is this repetition, and it becomes like a secondary thing without even thinking it. You just respond like a Pavlov's conditioned dog. You just respond with the saliva.
There's an interesting thing that was happening recently with AI, where I was watching so there's certain language that AI uses that isn't common to people, generally speaking, in the English world. But there's certain words that Nigerians use a lot in the English language when they use it. I can't remember what the word was, but it was a particular word that didn't appear very often prior to ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT started floating about, and the particular sample that it was using was something that to do with, I think it was Nigeria anyway, and the sample that they were using, this word kept cropping up. So ChatGPT overused it. And then what they found is that as people started using the AI models more often, they started using these words more often because of the repetition of it. And so that's not conscious. People aren't thinking about that. They're just being impacted by the things that they engage with. And obviously the AI is one example here, but other things are like YouTube, popular media. And this is the thing, like people are affected by crowds. There's a really good book called what's it? It's about the police in Germany during World War II. I can't remember the name. Can anyone recall it?
German police.
Ordinary men. So it's about how. So when Germany was taking over Poland, for example, they pushed the front line, and the troops would keep moving with the front line and keep attacking and fighting whoever they were fighting, maybe that the Polish or the Russians, etc. But then occupied land would be occupied, and they would have police to patrol and keep order within the occupied territories. And what they did is they hired ordinary people to do that. So these were bakers, farmers, policemen, the people that just lived in the area, and they trained them to do terrible things. And they even gave them the option. They weren't forced to. There's a really good documentary on it called Ordinary Men, based on the book. And it talks about how there wasn't this massive pressure. They weren't going to be punished if they said no. They said, we're going to have to ask you to do some horrible things. If you want, leave now. And nobody left apart from the odd person, one or two. And then the rest of them, they went out and they did terrible things. They killed children. They killed women. They even they tied mothers to their infants and would shoot one of them in a lake, and the dead would drag the living under to save ammo. They did a lot of terrible things, and then they had diaries. And what they noticed is in the beginning, they were struggling with it psychologically. So they would try to justify it, and they would write, if I didn't do this, what I did was a mercy, rah, 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 rah. And they're talking to each other at the same time because they're all engaging in this type of behavior, and they managed to justify it as a group. And then so what they found is as time went on, they even stopped justifying it. It just became normal to them. And then they continued to do these things. And a big part of that, again, was this group mentality. They'd been given these orders. They've been given this sort of quote unquote higher meaning, this great mission. And because everyone else was doing it, and the majority of the people weren't walking away, that you just got this odd one that did it here and there. The rest of the people felt sort of obligated to go along with it, despite the fact that there was a clear sort of tension even within inside of them at the beginning. And then as they sort of become used to it over time, it became normalized.
Basically, so sorry, Yusuf. So basically, Jordan, you're recommending books now to, mashallah, the library in Iran as well, which is quite impressive, mashallah.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, brother Yusuf, but I think I really want to get to the next point. And Jordan, so do you think it is just pretty much like herd mentality, like a football team, my team against your team? Do you think it's just a lot to do with that?
I mean, I've just joined X recently, and it's been a real eye opener in terms of like people huddling together and sharing misinformation, and you can tell that the algorithm's been feeding exactly what they want. Imran said something interesting the other day, which got me thinking about, because I always thought that it's a few racist leaders or whatever they are, anti-Muslim leaders funded, and they're duping the people. But Imran talked about, people are evoking racism within people. And it does feel like that because of the sheer numbers, the sheer numbers turning up to these events, not 3 million, but, even 100,000 in London marching next to a guy like Tommy Robinson, who's literally on stage ripping up flags and stuff like that. And Elon Musk is telling people that violence is coming to their door. And some of I know people on my personal Facebook that were sharing pictures, and I'm like, that person's not like an EDL member or a far right person. What's their thing? And like I say, people are. There seems to be a lot of hatred being stirred up amongst people, and I would say definitely for me the social media aspect of it is quite scary, because obviously now I'm checking out a lot of this stuff. The algorithm's feeding it to me. And even just today, I shared it with you guys. It said, Britain First shared a post saying Muslims or dogs, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, that's exactly what the Nazis were sharing, however many 70 years ago. And it's a scary time. We're living in a time where Trump's the most powerful man in the world.
Dowie, do you think, from what you've heard with the members here, that it is very much just like a football team thing, tribalism? It's just it's easy to blame the people that you perhaps don't know much about, that you dislike, that you've been told are dangerous, and so you just pick a team, and your team is white, English, British, and basically the more different the people are, and in this case obviously Muslims, we have certain barriers when it comes to assimilation. We can integrate very well, but when it comes to assimilating, i.e. becoming exactly like the host country, there's going to be limitations, because we can't drink alcohol, we can't go to clubs with you, we can't go on Tinder with you and stuff like that, because our religion doesn't allow that sort of stuff. So there's always going to be limitations there, right? So do you think it is very much just like this football team mentality, where if they're prepared to attack one another, even though both teams are like English men, just from different regions of the country, and they're prepared to throw bricks in each other's faces because they hate each other so much just over a football game? Do you think that's really what is probably just going on here?
Well, I think everybody wants to belong to something. I think it's a very natural human thing that we want to belong to a tribe, a place, and a people. So I think that's a very easy one to tap into. My real concern is who's steering this ship. It's very easy for us to say they want to be footballification and tribalistic. It's true, of course they do, everyone does, but there's someone behind this way bigger than Tommy, way bigger than Tuffs, way bigger than all of them. Actually, they're just the little minions that we see on camera. There's people behind this that are deliberately steering this in this direction, and that's the ones that I want to get to. They're the ones that I want to expose. They're the ones that I want to say, look guys, this is so obvious. Because if we're looking at people that are just different, then Hindus would be even more different than Muslims, because Muslims are at least an Abrahamic belief. They at least accept the Bible, they accept the God, they accept Jesus, peace be upon him, they accept Moses and Noah. The Hindus don't accept any of that. And they look different, they eat different, everything about them is pretty much different. So the fact that it's been deliberately steered towards Muslims tells me that there's a bigger player here, a bigger game at play, a bigger reason. And I honestly believe, and unfortunately believe, and want to not be right for the first time, you know, some of the things you want to be, I don't want to be right, that we're heading for a civil war. And history will back me up on that. I mean, every 80 to 100 years in Europe, we end up killing millions of everyone, including ourselves. So it's not unrealistic for me to assume that all the same rhetoric that was used in the 1930s and 40s in Europe against the Jewish population is being reused now. It's nothing special. It's nothing reinvented. It's just the same stuff coming out. Muslims or dogs, they're taking our women. It's all been said before. Who's behind it? What's the end game? And what are we going to do about it? I think the three big question marks that we need to be dealing with.
Dowie, it's interesting because in the Epstein files, the elites, these people were discussing and talking about how they desired the breakup of Europe by promoting Brexit and creating civil unrest and creating division within society. Because when you do that, the elites find it easier to orchestrate new, ingenious ways to rip off basically the general public, which they have been doing. And if you look at the stats, they're very, very clear where salaries, wages for the average person in this country for the last 20, 25 years have stagnated.
And
yet the richest people, the elites, have
but we are effectively doing what they want us to do.
Yeah. We are
effectively talking about small fry. I mean, Liam, in the grand scheme of things, is not hyper intelligent. You know, he's not academically intelligent. He's not super rich. He's influential on his own channel. He is. But in the grand scheme of things, we're supposed to be arguing with him. The whole point is that they want us to argue with him and his people. That's the whole point. Because while we're busy ourselves doing that, we ain't looking over there. And over there is where I want the people over there. Someone else, that our true enemy has not yet shown his face. But our true enemy has given us an enemy to shout at. And they're shouting at us and we're shouting at them. And Speaker's Corner has become a pantomime of that. Muslims and Christians go down and shout at each other. Mate, you're both being played. Both of you are being played. You know, so the Liam podcast, in effect, we needed to do them sort of things to clear up things about the religion, you know, and have someone on there that at least didn't sit there and sort of, you know, collapse, as it were, like a deck of cards, but not disrespecting the other guests because they just weren't ready for his type of talk. I've listened to that talk all my life. I come from a council estate. I work on building sites. He's not going to surprise me. But effectively, I think we're supposed to be arguing with each other. And the whole point in that we are arguing with each other means that we're not arguing. We're not actually. Look, the whole Epstein files has been brushed under the carpet. If it had been Ahmed, not Epstein, then they probably would have tried kicking everyone out of the country by now. But the fact of the matter is, I think we're all still doing what they want us to do.
Yeah,
we're all still dancing to the tune.
People are being played. I totally agree.
We're all being played.
Let's get the next clip on, and we're going to try to get some guests on at the end if anybody wants to come on. We've gone on for about an hour and a half. We're going to try to round things up by midnight because I think things will get late otherwise. But let's have a look at the next clip here.
Yeah, I look at the intense gaze that he has with Brother Dowie. If that's not love, what is it? I need to know.
That's very warm, friendly, fuzzy feelings going on there.
Talking Sharia, or what you're asking me exactly?
Well, the Islamic regime that they live under in Sudan, or
I don't know that they live under an Islamic regime.
What about Iran then?
This Shiite, Liam, I don't get involved with them.
So you're anti the Islamic Republic?
I'm not in favour of them, no. But I don't think we should be getting our noses involved either. I don't think we should be poking our noses into what goes on in Iran. And I'm a Sunni Muslim, not a Shiite, so I'm not going to indulge in the Shiite situation. However, why are we getting involved in Iran? I mean, I don't get it why we're sticking our noses in there. It's never worked out well, was it?
Well, let's go down that route then, because another comment I made on one of your posts was the UK is trying to prevent a 79 situation where there's an Islamic revolution. Yeah. And you said that'll never happen. And so I didn't respond. I thought I'd ask you now. So why do you think that there's no chance of a 79 style Islamic revolution happening in the UK?
Firstly, what happened?
Okay, should we go into that or should we?
I mean, it's a non-point, but let's get him on.
In a minute, he talks about, which has got to be added, where he talks about Sadiq Khan's trying to implement Sharia law. That bit happy stitches.
Let's get it. Let's get that clip included.
Not similar line with the Shiite revolution. You know what happened in the history of Iran, anyway, don't you? How they got rid of an elected leader, then they put in a Shah, and then the Shah was a tyrant because he was giving all the wealth to the West, so that the Shiites overthrew him. That's their thing, okay? To say that you're going to are you talking about, is there going to be an Islamic revolution in this country? Is that,
I'm saying,
just so I can understand.
I'm saying, do you not think it's a possibility with the influx of Muslims we've got coming in?
No, we are not going to have an Islamic revolution in this country, or an Islamic takeover. Is that what you mean? Okay, because firstly, how
you know what I mean?
No, well, what do you mean exactly? Just because I want you to say.
Okay, let me say. Take a breath.
Yeah.
I'll ask the question in its entirety.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And then respond.
Yeah.
This ain't fucking down. We're not in Parliament now.
Right.
We ain't got to try and dodge and swerve and
no.
trick.
I want to be straight, but I just want to understand.
I hit you with straight questions. Hit me with straight answers.
Right.
We ain't got time for bullshit. 1979 in Iran, there was an Islamic revolution.
Yes.
Ever since then, it's been barbaric, very unsavoury.
Yeah.
I made a comment on one of your posts.
Yeah.
Saying that the UK is trying to prevent a 79 style Islamic revolution.
Right.
And you said there's no chance of that ever happening. So the question is, why do you think that there's no chance whatsoever that there could be an Islamic revolution in the UK?
Okay. Generally, not just from Shiites.
Just in general, yeah.
Okay, because you know the Shiites are a smaller group in Islam. They're about 10% at max. And in the UK, they're probably, I don't know what percent, very small percent in the UK. So that's not going to happen, okay? There is a major difference between Shiites and Sunnis. We don't really get along. We don't really cooperate for the most part, okay? Excuse me. So this thing about that Islam is going to take over in the country is a real gaslighting argument. It's not going to happen, Liam. I promise you. I know the Muslim community from the inside for 28 years, all right? Firstly, how are we going to do it? I know a lot of Muslims, mate. I don't know anyone with an aircraft carrier. I don't know anyone with a fighter jet or a tank or a helicopter, okay? So it's not going to happen.
Political jihad?
No. From who? From Sadiq Khan. Most of the Muslims, is that what you mean?
Political I'm talking jihad. About there's an expansion of Muslim politicians.
All right, good. Okay, let's look at them. Most of the, a lot of the Muslims, and I don't even consider Sadiq Khan to be a Muslim.
Why not?
Look at him. I mean, does he look like he's got any Islam in his own body? Never mind, is he going to implement it anywhere else? When you get involved in politics, as I'm sure we'll probably agree on this point, you have to make way too many concessions, way too many compromises with your morals and your standards, okay? So he's out there advocating for LGBTQ and all the rest of it, which is contradictory to Islam, okay? It doesn't look like he's never references Islam. He never talks about Islam. When you go into that world, Liam, you go into that world and you
let's stop it there because there's a couple of points there. Fundamentally, the points there fundamentally are he talks about this Iranian revolution. I mean, it's just such a stupid argument. It really is. It's just plucked out of thin air. And again, I would stress that 99% of the people watching that stream wouldn't have a clue what he's talking about. No. And
that's exactly what Yusuf said. It's giving simple things to complicated situations. The Iran thing is more complicated than just how he's framing it.
Yeah. And not just that, even the whole well, look at Sadiq Khan. He's a Muslim and he's doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like the Muslims are probably more frustrated with Sadiq Khan than any of the non-Muslims are. He's supposed to be representing the Muslims. We keep getting told that he's implementing the Sharia in the West, and he's not in any way, shape, or form. He can't even behave like a Muslim. So
he got takfired on that podcast, didn't he?
Say again.
He got takfired.
But it's absurd, and this idea as well. We're all sort of sneaking around, and we've got this secret tunnel system underneath Manchester and London, and we're plotting, and most people are just chilling. And the thing is there's a few reverts here, and we came to Islam from the outside, and if we'd been hoodwinked and then joined the Muslims, and there was this sort of secret plot, it's hold on a sec, I thought there wasn't. You've been telling me there wasn't. Now we're a part of you. It's we've found your tunnels. We've got your balaclavas.
I got camels ready. I'm replacing my car. As soon as
but the second you convert, you would quickly leave, and it sort of touches on this whole taqiyya thing. It's like, oh, taqiyya. You're just doing taqiyya. It's like, but then if you became a Muslim, you would find out that everyone's been lying to you, and the whole motivation that brought you into Islam in the first place would just make you run from it. You wouldn't.
Ponders, the thing is, Ponders, if you want to have somebody who infiltrates the Muslims and pretends that they're Muslim and they're really a reporter or whatever, they could get the lowdown in 6 months, 3 months. People have managed to get into, MI5s and MI6s, and they've managed to get into all of these places. Mormons.
It's easy. It's so easy. I put on a jubba and I walk into any masjid.
Exactly.
And it's not like you've got to give the secret password to get in. Like you could just literally walk into any mosque. You could go in. You could have a recorder going. You'd set your little tiny mic up and just record everything they say, and you'd find out all the secret plans.
Exactly.
There's not. We're not all in this big sneaky WhatsApp group.
It's just nuts. Imran, I want to ask you a quick question, and you can of course refer to this as well, but. It's a very dangerous term that they've been using called political jihad.
It just attaches many, you watch the news in America, and if someone's got an Islamic jihad rocket, I mean, there's a special type of rocket which is powered by Islamic jihad fuel or something. It's just you add as many Islamic scary words to something to make it sound worrying. And
like an Islamist.
These are sort of, how can I say something that's going to scare the people? And it's like a type of conditioning. Jihad. I mean,
but what they're doing, Imran, what they're doing is that in the last elections, there were a lot of Muslim candidates who stood up to be elected, and of course that some of them were in communities where there was a reasonable number of Muslim voters. I mean, for example, in Redbridge, in the area that I used to live in, and many of us used to live in. There was West Streeting, and West Streeting is a big supporter of Zionism, big supporter of Israel. He's excused what Israel has been doing to the Palestinian people, and in fact, when he had to, showed his text messages that he was sending to Mandelson. The disgraced MP who was giving secrets, government secrets, in fact, to Jeffrey Epstein. In those text messages, Wes Streeting says that basically we're going to be done in the election because the people are really angry with our support for what Israel has done, and in particular, in that particular area. There was the Palestinian lady who stood up, very young. I think she's only 30 or something. And she stood up against him. Now, he had a 5,000 majority, and in that election, he ended up with just a 500 majority. He nearly lost that seat, and he's now trying to vie to become the prime minister because he's challenging he wants to challenge the leadership, and hopefully from his perspective, he wants to knock out the prime minister. Now, the point is, people got angry, and that's why they voted against West Streeting. So they're calling these type of things political jihad, where the Muslim who are now engaging in the political arena, in the political space, to protest against things that they are vehemently and passionately against, which is our democratic right, and they're calling this a political jihad.
Are they? That's just normal, isn't it? If you agree about something, you're going to vote about it. Isn't that what everyone does? Yeah. I mean, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, that's exactly
they think
what
we're going to try and take over with it.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
You need to get involved in democracy.
Either become non-violent and vote, so you're not violent. And then when you do that, if that's still a type of violence, then it doesn't make sense. But I think this whole thing about using Iran as an example is crazy, because the question is, why was there a so-called Islamic revolution in 1973, or was it 73 or 79?
Yeah.
And so why was it? It was because the previous government, which had been which had been elected prime minister, Mossadegh, he in 1953 was overthrown by the CIA. So there was already an elected prime minister, democratically elected prime minister in Iran, who simply asked the oil companies who were taking oil out of the ground that we want to check what you're doing, like how much you're taking out, and are you paying us fairly for what you're taking out? Whichever those companies were. So the Americans overthrew him. The CIA went in, they overthrew him, and they installed the Shah. So they installed this king, the Shah of Iran, and he was overthrown by this so-called Islamic revolution. But he was overthrown by the people
because he was corrupt.
Because he was corrupt, and he was just letting the American corporations and British corporations who were just taking whatever they wanted out of Iran's wealth without giving them proper recompense for that. He was just allowing that to happen. So the people overthrew him. Nothing to do with religion.
Exactly.
Look at the gaslighting as well, because it's like he's pointing out the Iran evolution as if it was Islam that sort of motivated that whole thing, rather than interfering with a foreign democracy. Yeah, like they keep going on about like we need to get democracy, and then when it happens and the people vote for someone, they're like, oh no, that's the wrong kind of democracy. we wanted ours. Let's get over there. And so like they're complaining about the democracy taking place in the Arab lands, and then again they're like, oh, democracy. And then what is democracy? Democracy is the people getting involved in politics, and like you said, Imran, voting for the things that they believe. That that's the whole point. It's like public engagement in the public space. When the Muslims do that, it's like, oh no, that what you're doing. Why? Like the whole point of democracy is you have varying opinions, and people like put forward their ideas, and you've got the quote unquote the marketplace of ideas fighting against each other, and the best ideas win. But if Muslims get involved in that in any way, shape, or form, it's reshaped. Rather than democratic engagement, it's turned into like some sneaky overt plan, rather than us simply voting for things that we believe in. Just the same way that they're doing. It's like, no, but you're supposed to vote like we do. Then that's not democracy. You're not like, you don't want democracy, because whenever the Muslims engage in it, you complain about that and call it some political jihad. And then when you get democracy occurring abroad, they interfere with that. Even Gaddafi, so you talked about Iran, Gaddafi was the similar thing. He was someone that was propped up by the US again. And you have that all over the Arab lands. Western people coming over, interfering with the politics. You have it in South America as well. Same thing going on there. It's like, we want democracy so long as it's our flavor of democracy. If it gives rise to results we find distasteful, then we're going to overthrow it. We're going to prop up a dictator. We're going to do whatever we need to do so that it plays into our interests. But the way they think isn't like that. They think that the Muslims are getting into positions of power in politics, and they are going to use somehow unify their positions of power to establish Islam in this country. That's what their paranoia is. Their paranoia isn't Iran.
I understand.
Their paranoia is that you got a Muslim mayor here, you got a Muslim councillor there, you got another Muslim mayor up north, and they're all over the place, and somehow they're getting themselves into positions of authority using political the political system as a way of implementing the religion of Islam.
But you see, what the funny thing is,
by the way. Sorry,
Imran, just make your point.
Very brief. The funny thing was that Reform. What's that for? Reform? Like Layla Cunningham. Yeah. She's from. I think she's Iraq or Iranian. I can't remember, one of these Arab countries. And if I'm right, and she's a Muslim heritage. So she says she's a Muslim. And I think she was on a podcast with Loki. I think it was Piers Morgan, and Loki was there, and she was getting annihilated, as we'd expect. And she kept making the claim, "But I'm a Muslim," and a lot of people even consider her to be, one of these Muslims who are infiltrating politics. But she's part of the Reform Party, probably the most anti-Muslim party.
When we're doing that, we're performing Turkey just to get into positions of power.
But it's again the same thing. Look at the person that you're talking about. There's no shred of Islam anywhere in.
I don't consider. I'm Sadiq Khan's Islam is in doubt, at best.
I think the main point here is that
none of them have got Islam on them.
I think the main point really here is that people believe what they want to believe, not what is necessarily true. And so if you say to people that Muslims are going to take over because they're getting involved in politics and they're going to enforce Sharia law on everybody, that is the quintessential definition of what Islamophobia is, because a phobia is an irrational fear. And the reason why it's an irrational fear is because the Sharia prohibits you to force people to abide by your Sharia if they're not Muslim. And that's the hilarious thing here, that the very Sharia that they fear actually gives them complete autonomy to live their lives as they want to live their lives. So
to command their own people.
And we have historic evidence where in Iraq, for example, when the Caliphate had its headquarters in Iraq, the Christians had their own courts, the Jews had their own courts. They were pig farms in Iraq because they do not fall under the Sharia because they're not Muslim. That's the point. So the reason why Islamophobia is a correct term here, because a lot of these people, they don't like it because they think a phobia is an irrational fear and they feel that their fear is very rational. Well, it's not rational, certainly not rational here, because under the Sharia, you are not permitted to force other people to fast and to marry the way you marry and divorce the way you divorce and live your life the way you live your life according to the Sharia. So they're ignorant about that. So it's just pulling things out of a hat, exaggerating things, manipulating things, fabricating things to create this air of fear. Anyway, let's get the next point on, because and Jordan, I'd like you to comment on that one because I haven't heard from you for a bit. Ijaz, if we can get the next point on, inshallah.
So I think he would love to enforce Sharia law. He makes a massive deal of Eid and a very small effort with Christmas, and he's banned bikini models on the underground.
Let's move on to the next. So that's just rubbish. I mean, it's not even point commenting on the fact that the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is somehow trying to influence Islam in London. That is just.
Abbas, he was just doing the Chinese New Year last week, and he did the Diwali festival.
It's BS.
He's done every other festival.
It's just BS. It's pointless. Honestly, it's even pointless having to.
Liam himself as an atheist.
People believe that.
Yeah, Liam himself as an atheist doesn't do Christmas, right? So he must be obviously anti.
I think he does do Christmas.
Does he?
Because I think he does do Christmas, because what they'll say is, see, they can mix and match as they want. They can pick up and put down everything that they want. This country was built upon Christian values and Christian standards. So
from when?
I will, because he come out of church. He done a thing on Christmas Eve where he was coming out of church at midnight. It's like the midnight church thing. He said, right, that's it now. I'm going off social media for a few days. I'm not a Christian, but I'm coming out of church because this country was built on Christian values. So it's a case of keeping both camps happy and then picking and choosing when you want to defend the Bible and use the Bible as a criteria for the morality of and the traditions of the country, and then just denying it when someone asks you about it.
So let me get this straight. He's been sunk in the river of Jordan. And
he got baptized.
And baptized. He's been christened or baptized or baptized.
He's playing pretend. He's doing it to Pia.
And he goes to church, and in fact, I mean, what secular atheists go to church at midnight on mass and stuff like that? Anyway, but he's
no, he is.
Anyway,
Napoleon's a Pia. He's doing what he can to just appease his crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Even though he doesn't believe it.
I think he goes into grooming gangs here, so I'm not going to change the timestamp.
Yeah.
So let me just play.
I mean, who the fuck does he think he is? But let's move on from that, because I just wanted your answer.
Okay, cool.
I'm sure people know my answers anyway, but I want to hear your answers. In the UK, who predominantly rapes children? Describe the kind of man that does that.
Predominantly white people.
Stop it there, because I think that is the question that we're going to answer now. Imran, why don't you start with this really stupid question, please?
Well, I don't, because this is the thing here. So obviously he's going to talk about grooming gangs, right? That's what he's going to talk about.
Well, no, his question is specific.
Yeah.
Who is predominantly raping children? That's what he said, right?
Yeah, so predominantly, child sexual exploitation, that's the term for all abuse of children, yeah. That is particularly sexual abuse. So child sexual exploitation, 95% white men, right? Okay, it's massively high. So just look up Ella Coburn's work, and she's the one who looked into this claim about 85% of grooming gangs are, Pakistani Muslim, and this claim. And she looks into that, completely debunks that data, how it was put together, because this was put together by this statistic came from the Quilliam Foundation, which were funded by the government, and our own methodology was absolutely crap, because they took a small sample, I think a couple of hundred, and they extrapolated from that. And even in the data they had, it just said Asian man or Asian male, and no religion was specifically mentioned. So they don't ask this question, and so they did, they extrapolated it, and they just put it into the papers loved it, 85%. So the question. So now we have to just understand this a bit. So if you're looking at child sexual exploitation, it's predominantly white. It's disproportionately white men. Let's put it that way. Why am I saying that? Because I think there's about 12 or 15% of the population is non-white, right, in the UK. Yeah, and so overrepresentation of white men. We don't ask this question, what's wrong with white society or culture, or we don't ask this question. It's not allowed to be asked. We only ask that of ethnicity, of ethnic people, or from ethnic minorities. So that's the answer to that question. Now, he's going to focus on grooming gangs. And so what question is, what percentage of all child sexual exploitation is grooming gangs? So grooming gangs is a non-academic term that was used by, particularly in the media, to describe a specific type of a subset of the total abuse. So what type is this? Is that associated with nightlife? So in the sense of people who are going to off licenses, takeaways, taxis at night time, and being exploited by groups associated with that. And so we have that type, and that's called grooming. These were called grooming gangs who are exploiting these underage people and teenage girls, but they were underage. And usually these girls were from a compromised background. So whether they were in care or whether they were in families that were sort of not looking after them, and even amongst them, they were not all white. So this is another myth that's propagated that all white girls. No, there were Muslim girls, there were girls who were non-Muslims, there were black girls, white girls. There's a mixture of people. The vast majority were white girls, but it wasn't exclusively like that. These were vulnerable girls that were exploited by these people from these groups. Even in there, it's not clear that this great percentage is there, because if you look at grooming, so if you go to different parts of the country, the grooming gangs represent the large groups of people that are there. So the grooming gangs in the south or in Glasgow, they're all white. If you go to certain parts of the country where there's a predominantly Asian area, then you're going to find that group predominating that, because they're the ones who are involved in that part of the lifestyle. But the only things that are put on the media is this 85% claim, and it's a specific community that I mentioned because it serves a purpose. The other people aren't mentioned. I mean, if you're looking at grooming gangs, then the most worrying grooming gang is the one that is mentioned in the Epstein files. These are people who are hugely powerful, grooming girls from all over the world, shipping them in country, even using RAF bases, even using the visa system, bypassing customs, huge stuff they're doing to exploit. I mean, we have evidence of this sort of showing up, and so there's high level complicity in grooming, and no one's really talking about that. We don't see these same people queuing up when there's a white gang, or if there's a gang, these high level elite gangs. We don't see that. So it's just that we have to have this understanding. I really like Dowie's approach in this, because he talked about one of the things he sort of talked about is our would Muslims deal with these people? So if you're convicted of this, what would happen to you in Islam? Definitely. And I love that approach, because it just throws it back at him. Why are you guys not doing this? And so when no one's defending these people, whoever is doing this and is caught, they should be punished. But you're not interested in punishing everyone. You're only interested in going after and highlighting a certain ethnic group because it serves your narrative. We don't see you outside. I've never seen Tommy outside a white grooming gang court case. Never. Why not?
And Imran, the fundamental point here really is that his question directly is to Dowie, who predominantly rapes children. Well, actually, the government figures show that the only community that are overrepresented is the white community. By a few percentage. It's not like a massive. It's like 4 or 5% over the. So when you calculate it, is it per capita? Isn't it per capita? When you do the calculations per capita, in other words, if there's 2% Pakistanis living in this country, if they do 2% of the abuse, then they are effectively, not overrepresented. Okay, if they had less than 2%, then they would be underrepresented. Now, with the Pakistani community that he wants to talk about, or the Muslim community, the statistics are government statistics. These are not done by Sharia compliant courts that he worries about, which doesn't even exist. But anyway, the Pakistanis are not overrepresented. Muslims are not overrepresented. Other ethnicities are not overrepresented. The white community, white English, British men are overrepresented. So if you're going to even go by per capita, okay, it would be white people. So again, this is another false narrative, a false argument, and spreading these type of lies again causes hatred and division, and you're part of that environment that is creating that hatred and that division. Now, why you would want to do that, I can't read your mind, but it is, quite frankly, I think, a horrid thing to be someone who is prepared to facilitate hatred, potential violence against people, because we know where this is going. It's already going there now. Okay, they won't attack 6'2" guy walking down the street who looks Muslim if it's only one or two of them. They're not going to do it. But if there's a woman with a hijab on with their kids, they'll say stuff, they'll do stuff. So we know what's happening here, and you're feeding part of that behavior by falsifying evidence and falsifying the data. And quite frankly, it just shows how bankrupt you are, that you have to stoop to lies and deception in order to try to make your case. You're a fraud, quite frankly.
If I could just get a couple of thoughts in here. Is anybody here familiar with the racist Reddit communities? Right, so on Reddit, there used to be anti-black communities, like we had Coontown and the N-word, etc. Okay, and I spent a lot of time trying to understand why these people hated black people primarily, and what were the talking points that they would use. The thing is, they would end up using talking points that here are basically hasty generalizations. They'll ask questions like, maybe one of you guys can answer this for me. They'll point out like there's crime, robbery is really high in South Africa, and robbery is really high in Germany from the same ethnic group. Why is wherever we find that particular ethnic group, there is that particular crime? Or they would say something like, so I'll repeat that. They'll give you a statistic like Africans commit high robberies in South Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Liberia, etc. And then they would compare those statistics with, let's say, American or European statistics. And they say, we also find black people in these countries. And look, they also do the same or similar crimes. So wherever you find these people, you find those crimes. And if you think about it, this also applies to Muslims. Just I think yesterday, the police in Canada, there's a city called Mississauga. They published a report of 4 young people who were primarily Muslim and Arab who were in the drug and women trafficking. And the ages of these people were 15 years old, 19, 20, and 21. And they were trafficking people as young as the age 11. So what did the right-wingers in Canada do? They said they've got grooming gangs in the UK, and look, we find that there are also grooming gangs here in Canada. The problem is, in the last 2 weeks, there were like 3 cases of all white Canadian grooming gangs, and they didn't say anything about it. I never saw them posting about it. So Muslims are underrepresented in the statistics, and they attempt to overrepresent us, and they're not using new arguments. The same arguments that the Americans used against the Italians and the Polish, that the British used against the Polish and people from the Eastern Europe. It's the exact same arguments. They just replace the ethnicity of certain people with the religion of Islam and Muslims. It's the exact same arguments. So it's not something new. And so we have to ask the question. I think Brother Dowie, he said it best himself. These are the types of arguments that people were using against the Jews 70 years ago. And I'm really sitting and I'm trying to ask myself, are we really going to replay this disaster again? And as Muslims, what can we do to stop it? Because here's the thing, the more we speak up for ourselves, the angrier they get at us, the more hateful that they become. And they don't want people to have sympathy in any way for Muslims. They've basically dehumanized us. So the question has to be, and I think Brother Dowie said it perfectly, who wants these narratives to stay? And who are the people funding it? Who is the people that are going to benefit from these types of arguments? And as the Muslim community, we better start asking that question now, sooner rather than later, because it could be our children's lives at risk, literally. That's, those are my thoughts on it.
Jordan, briefly, if you want to comment on it, and then Yusuf.
Yeah, I think touch upon what Imran said, but shocking at the 83% thing still goes around. Like, that was completely destroyed by the police and by Ella Coburn as, completely, they missed out. Like, I remember they put an age category in, so it was only between like the ages of, I think it was something like 11 to 16 or something. And because there were loads of incidents under that age that were done by white offenders, and it was an on-street kind of grooming category, like Imran said. It was a subcategory of a subcategory, and they made a percentage of that. And that 83% is still quoted to this day, despite it being, I guess the other thing I'll add to the grooming gangs thing is their link to the age of Aisha with grooming gangs. I don't know how that happened. A marriage 1400 years ago with, we have strict rules about no alcohol. And I think Dowie mentions this, no alcohol.
Yeah.
You can't even touch a woman's hand if you're not married to them.
Yeah.
And Islam is supposed to be responsible. They call them Islamic grooming gangs. Mm-hmm. Like there's any Islam in that, you have to marry somebody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is we can't win either way. They say if we don't get involved in politics, that we're isolated and that we're extreme because of that. When we do get involved in politics, then we're extreme and we're doing political jihad. They complain when we segregate and and men and women have their own spaces, and they say we're enforcing Sharia on it. And then they complain that we don't drink alcohol and we're not integrating in this way, and that we don't have dating culture and we don't do drugs. Like we're not integrating. But then when someone does do all of that, and in a sense they're integrating, they're getting involved in the nightlife culture, they're drinking alcohol, they're giving other people alcohol, they're taking drugs, they're not segregating genders. So they're you've got men engaging with women that they're not married to and that they're not mahram. Then again, somehow this gets twisted into an Islamic thing. It's like, so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And not just that. It's the idea of putting the cart before the horse. They're looking. You were talking about the subgroup and the subgroup of the subgroup. They look at where like there's going to be the vast majority of, say, like people from Pakistan in a particular group. They define a category by that, and then they look and they go, oh, but look, all of the crimes that come from this happen to be within this subgroup of people that we've already predefined. But you can do that, and this is why statistics can be dangerous and it's often abused. But it's frustrating. And on what Jazz was saying, the overrepresentation of Muslims in the media. There's a brother called Halabi who has done a video on the Muslim overrepresentation in the media. In the United States, domestic terrorists make up the 12.5% of domestic terrorism is made up by Muslims. The vast majority
in this podcast.
Yeah. The vast majority of domestic terrorist attacks in the United States is performed, and you can see he puts all of the articles because this was an academic study. The vast majority of domestic terrorist attacks in the United States is performed by right-wing political domestic terrorists, and they're white and they're born in the United States. And yet, despite the fact that Muslims make up only a tiny percentage, 12.5% of the total domestic terrorist attacks, they are given over 50% of the media attention. And they did studies into this where they looked at groups performing certain acts, and they noticed if the perpetrator was a Muslim and was brown, that the media would just push that out, like absurdly across the media. If the attacker was white and not Muslim, and the victims were themselves minorities, for example, if they attacked the community or anyone else, then they got hardly any media attention at all. And so, and people wonder what they're like, oh, why? Because this is the very thing that causes this anxiety in the populace, because they're given the impression that it's Muslims, because whenever the news talk about it, they say Muslims did this, Muslims did that, Muslims did this, Muslims did that. And they're not really looking at the data to see whether or not that overrepresentation is even justified. And they just hear it over and over and over again. And they confuse the fact that because Muslims are mentioned in the media more than any other group, that equates to the idea that we're actually performing more of the attacks than any other group. And that's just simply not true. So,
well, I think Yusuf, you make an important point there, which is statistics can be presented in a very dangerous way. So the statistics of grooming gangs is a subset of a subset, which is the study that's been done by Ella Cobain, and she's a professor, and she studies these things. Now, she said if you take another subset of grooming rings, which is another subset, which is, by the way, these are not none of these are legal terms by which you're prosecuted. You're prosecuted for child exploitation and grooming and these things. It's a blanket term. But how many? If you were to just have that term, grooming rings, Yusuf, do you know what group would come out and what percentage they would be in that group?
No, tell me.
100% white.
What's the definition of grooming ring?
So a grooming gang is defined by people who know each other. A grooming ring are people who don't know each other, but they maybe go on the internet and they form a ring in that sense, but they're not known to one another, basically. So it's just a subset of a subset. It depends how you define the crime.
Exactly. And if you keep playing with these terms and you're like, right, we're just going to look at, people that own takeaways. Ugh. Like, how many people who own takeaways perform these crimes? What are the statistics? Or it's ridiculous. And you're obviously, if you like the cat before the horse thing again, if you're predefining your new term in such a way so that it's only looking at places where these groups happen to be predominant anyway. Because if you just ask the question, if you look at that, it's like, who are, without looking at crimes, it's like Muslims overrepresented in terms of takeaway owners. Like, so, like, is that, how does that then translate into this sort of justified statistical analysis? Because you've already determined that you're looking at that group anyway.
And
so it's not a surprise if you find what you find.
The only fair statistic is to look at things holistically. All child exploitation, crimes against children should be looked at holistically. And then, okay, let's look at the figures. And in those figures, Muslims and Asians are not overrepresented, but white people are. Now, that's an uncomfortable truth that they conceal and they hide. And I remember when the grooming cases were first coming out, I think maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. And you know, the discussion on the radio, what is within their culture and their religion that makes them do these things? So I asked the same question. What is it within English white culture that gives you a higher propensity, even per capita, overrepresentation in that crime? And what is it about your culture and your ethnicity that makes that happen? Would that be a fair statement for me to say? No, that would be a stupid thing for me to say.
And would you say, Abbas, just quickly, that
it's
from what
okay
I've seen
to us, basically. Sorry,
from what I've seen of these groomers is that they're actually born in England. So when you talk about their culture being a certain thing, because people often link immigrants to grooming gangs, and they've kind of just connected the two. And you see people outside immigrant hotels with these stupid placards that say "Protect our women and kids." Like, from what? From the geezer that's travelled over from, what's he got? And obviously, if any of them do a crime, it's all over the place.
Yeah, but let's not let evidence get in the way, because obviously that becomes inconvenient. Imran, I think you want to present something.
Yeah, just talking about evidence. So I'll put the link for the article, one of the articles from Ella Coben in the chat for everyone to have a look at. But it's really worth reading through it, because it talks about, one of the things it talks about was the way that the media reports this. So how this sort of narrative came about, talking about the Murdoch media and what they did and what the politicians then did with that. But what's really interesting is this sort of looking at, if you guys can see this,
Yeah.
Special interest groups.
Yeah, so let me just see if I can find that. I just want to just mention this because it's worth understanding this. So talking about special interest groups providing the missing research. So stereotypes of Muslim rape gangs was greatly boosted by the Quillian Foundation's Grooming Gangs report. There's the source of the spurious but ubiquitous claim of the 84% grooming gang offenders are Asian. Although framed as academic and evidence-based, the report is soddy pseudoscience. Its conclusion that overrepresentation of Asian ethnicity, predominantly British Pakistani origin individuals, is conclusively irrefutable is deeply misleading. The report in no way delivers on its pretense of comprehensive data analysis of all child sex offences committed in the United Kingdom over a period of 12 years. The keyword comprehensive was later deleted amid furtive corrections to the published report. When challenged, staff outright lied, continued to meet valid criticisms with personal attacks. The supposed specific crime profile under investigation is confused, inconsistent, incoherent. The report is exceptionally weak methodologically. Instead of disclosing fundamentals like sources, sampling strategy, search terms, and inclusive parameters, there's vacuous assertions of extensive data mining methods, and its bizarre data section is a crude rehashing of results from different reports divested of caveats and limitations. So the important thing is they only looked at how many?
Wow.
Just looked at 264 offenders. Over how long? 12 years.
So that's cherry picked, isn't it? Clearly.
They looked at 264 people over 12 years, and that's where this came from. It gets worse. It gets worse than this. So this is obviously deviance amplification. It's just like if I take 3 people, and 2 of them have done a crime, and you say 66% of all crime of this type is committed by these groups of people. It's like that. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that worryingly, some academics have since uncritically cited Quilliam's drivel, even made similar dubious attempts to assess this disproportionality. And what's it based on? Muslim names and media reports. So they were just looking up basically a newspaper article. If the person had a Muslim name, they were making an assumption about that. So this is really, I mean, it's really, really terrible.
That again, that links to the thing we were talking about before about Muslim overrepresentation. So if they're relying on the media who are already overrepresenting, and then that's your data source, you're going to a polluted data source in order to make your determinations. Out of all of the media cases, more Muslims are represented in all of these reports. Well, yeah, because that's what gets clicks. That's what gets people anxious. And that's already been shown in other studies. So that they've completely overlooked how problematic their data set is. And they're not even looking at the fact. It's so unbelievably frustrating. There's like layers and layers and layers and layers of this crap.
And you know what it is, Yusuf? The amazing thing is this lady, Ella Cobain, she is the Professor of Human Trafficking and Exploitation in the Department of Security and Crime Sciences at UCL, University College London. She supervises numerous PhD students conducting innovative research into trafficking, smuggling, or related topics. This is not some nobody. This is not just some willy-nilly woman that lady that we've picked out from somewhere or some bloke down the street. No, this is a person who is an academic who researches and studies these things. And she's been on numerous, podcasts and things, completely trashing the statistics. And Imran, mashallah, provided parts of her research there in relating to this particular study. It's an absolute shambles. It's a shame, a stain on British society that we've allowed these lies to become regurgitated out to the extent where now people like Liam Tuffs comes out with these statements who predominantly rapes children.
In saying that, like, he even reads any of the studies as well. Like the guy, he'll quote the Quran and but I've never read it though. It's like, and he'll say things that are not even in the Quran. And he's like, you tell me. So what?
And then Dowie, he's got the caption under what you're saying. Yeah, he does. Just put the last clip on, and then we'll call it a day, inshallah. He's putting captions under what you're saying, as if none of this has been verified, and this is like nonsense.
That was the last clip that you sent me.
That was the last clip. All right, Jazakallah khair. He does.
All right, Assalamu alaikum, guys. Take care.
So I think we'll round things up here. But what we wanted to show here is that this is exactly the sort of gaslighting that the non-Muslims are doing. This is when Dowie is saying we need to find out who the people are at the top. Actually, we know who the people are at the top.
But they should be the ones we're focused on.
Yeah, because we know, for example, and this is not conspiracy, this is fact, because these people have admitted it, and you can easily research this. And in fact, we can maybe bring some things up. Imran can maybe do some quick searches on this. Israel has clearly said as a strategy that to gain extra support for Israel in that territory, it actively promotes Islamophobia. And we have people like Steve Bannon, for example, who came with $100 million, and he visited Wilders in Holland, and he visited Le Pen, the far right leader in France, and met with I think Tommy Robinson and these nut jobs, and they get money. Tommy himself, they call him 2 shilling Tommy because he gets money from the Israeli state. And so they're lobbying and they're pushing on media to push these type of stories. And when you already have a right-wing media and an editorial policy which is very, very heavily slanted towards bashing Muslims and bashing immigrants, this is where this is coming from. And what ends up happening is, in situations of turmoil, in situations of civil unrest, rich, influential people take advantage of those civil unrest and those problems, and they enrich themselves even further. Again, this is not conspiracy theory at all. You can research what's been happening for the last 20 years. Brexit itself They keep talking about immigrants costing this country, I think 12 billion a year or whatever it is. They come up with these figures. I'm not going to contest those figures. Those figures might be true. 12 billion is a lot of money. Do I want the government to waste money in that way, or do I want government to facilitate things rapidly? So if people are here genuinely, they get to work, they pay taxes, and if they're not here genuinely, then they shouldn't be here. That's fine. Most of us would agree with that. But the point here is, Brexit's cost us £100 billion a year. Why are you not worried about that? Why are you not protesting outside Farage, his constituency, his office, and saying, look what you got us into? The immigrants, apparently these illegal immigrants are costing us 12 billion or 13 billion, but your Brexit's costing us 100 billion. And this is precisely these people like Farage. The reason why they push this narrative is they don't want you to talk about the 100 billion that he's cost this country every year, by the way. Okay? They don't want you to talk about these things.
Well, that should be exactly what we do talk about then.
100%. And this is just a drop in the ocean. They don't want you to talk about the arms industry and how they lobby government to conduct wars. They don't want to talk about how many billions of pounds of arms we've given Ukraine. They don't want you to talk about that. They don't want you to talk about how the arms companies, are prolonging conflicts in order to make more money, which ends up costing the taxpayer tens of billions of pounds. They don't want you to talk about that. What they want you to focus about is Ali, who came on a dinghy to Dover, okay, and he's now put in a motel or a hotel, and it's costing us whatever it's costing us, £80 a day or £70 a day or whatever it's costing us to have him in that hotel or that motel. They want you to concentrate on that. But what they don't want you to concentrate on is the shambles, the corruption that is currently going on. They don't want you to talk about the 7 or 8 billion pounds that we spent on COVID PPE, when much of it could not be used and was given out to people like, for example, to the health secretary's bartender who got a contract for PPE. They don't want you to talk about that. They don't want you to talk about the people who got paid, who were related to or had dealings with the politicians who just forwarded those contracts to those people. And they don't want you to talk about that either. They don't want you to talk about all the corruption and the problems that they've created. They don't want you to talk about the utility companies that make record profits in austerity when wholesale prices have gone up in the world, and they are on the back of it making extra profit. And people are struggling to keep their houses warm. They don't want you to talk about that either, because the government they're not there to protect you or me. They're not there to protect our interests. So the utility companies give them what amounts to backhanders in order for policies to be established. That means that they're not held accountable. Okay, but they don't want you to talk about that. They don't want you to look at that. They want you to look at brown man Ali, 25-year-old, who came on a dinghy, and he's taken your job. And he's the reason why you can't pay your electric bill. Forget the companies are making record profits. Forget the fact that we sold everything off to private businesses, shareholders. Forget the fact that even the water, the rain that comes down, and we've had a lot of rain in the last 6 months in this country, which would amount to water being practically free. But we've sold off those companies to companies that are making record profits. And our water bills are going up from £20 a month to £30 a month to £60 a month. Guess what? Nobody cares. And that's where the problem is. But they don't want you to talk about that. Anyway, I've had my rant, Dowie.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that, but we end up fixating on the people, the very fringe, people that they put us there to rant about. The Tommy Robinsons, we ranting about him. He needs to be ranted about sometimes, but I'd rather rant about the people that pay him.
Yeah.
These are the people that we really need to start refocusing on, because I think it's kind of a futile effort when you're dealing with likes of Tommy, because he's paid to be there and he's paid to get that reaction, and he's probably paid to get us to argue with him. You know what I mean? So
I'm more interested in the people that really put him there and what's their agenda, and and we know who it is and we know what their agenda is, but most of the people don't.
Yeah,
but I think going after them is way more dangerous in every sense of the word than it is going after Tommy. Tommy was supposed to go after. That's what he's there for.
Yeah,
and the likes of, you know what I mean? I mean, that news channel they've got, I don't know what it's called, GB News.
That's just trash.
It's just, I mean, I don't get it. It's just so shit. It's just, why do people watch? Why would anyone watch that? But people do, and I think it's there just to take the piss out of people. Honestly, I don't think they just put that there just to have a laugh. I mean, the people that funded that must be laughing their socks off. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a loss-making exercise, and it's run by a hedge fund manager who is worth, I think, billions, and he funds it, and he's losing every day. He's losing money on that channel, but obviously it promotes the agenda that they've got. Brother Yusuf, any last words?
Yeah, just keep an eye on how they're constantly reframing everything. Even when he mentioned the Epstein files, he somehow tried to make it an Islamic thing, and he mentioned, would Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam be in the Epstein files? And it's like, well, no, clearly he wouldn't, because these people, the things that they were doing, the things that they are promoting, completely against Islam. Like, they're even like the four horsemen of the atheist apocalypse, and the things they're promoting. Like there was what's his name, Krauss. Was in there boasting because he got one guy to apostate in that debate that he had. Yeah. And like he's buzzing, and it's just absurd. It's absurd. They have to reframe things. It's like they're clearly hyper focused on the Muslims, and no matter what it is we do, like I said before, you can't win. You participate in democracy and do what democracy is asking you to do. Give your opinions, vote for the things you believe in. Then that's framed negatively. Muslims are trying to take over the world. They do the exact same thing. They're just patriotic people engaging in democracy. I'm sick to death of it at this point. I can't deal with it. Like the idea as well, like you can't win with the taqiyya. If you tell them the truth, you're doing taqiyya. You tell them, no, I'm not doing taqiyya. They go, how do I know that's not taqiyya? It's like you can't win. You point them in the direction of academics that are doing proper studies. They're doing taqiyya as well, even if they're not Muslim. But Liam could just say something. He doesn't have to even know what the thing that he's even sourcing. He just has to guess. I've heard, he can quote gossip that's wrong, objectively, and he doesn't have to be held to account for that. He's not performing taqiyya. He's just saying it as it is. I'm this honest guy. Look at me. I swear a bit. Whoa. Pat me on the back. I'm sick. Yeah. And it's like it's so like brain numbing to watch it just roll out. And then and just they hold the Muslims to these high standards. I'm not even convinced that he's actually bringing people on to have a conversation. Like he's not, even the way Dowie is engaging in a conversation. He's listening to what he's saying. He's talking about what the guy's.
Look, you're frozen there, Brother Yusuf. Brother Yusuf, there? No, I think he's
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Dowie's engaging in a conversation. He's digging into the subject. He's expanding on it. He's got and he's like, no. I just wanted a yes or no answer. He's not engaging in a conversation. If you don't say exactly what he's expecting, if you don't just confirm the things that he already believes, then he just poo-poos all over everything you say like a child. Like he doesn't want engagement. He's clip farming. That's it. You can see him getting red in the face, vein pop of his head. It's just I can't do it.
Don't let it get to you, bro. Don't let it get to you.
Get it all out,
Don't worry, Brother Yusuf. I'll give you a coaching session, and coaching worked at my coaching session. Dr. Jordan M, please.
Dr. Jordan M, I like that. So I it's been a journey for me in terms of like, I must have spoke to Dowie months ago now about this topic. And I think I've always thought that the so-called far right are a niche bunch of, they become the dregs of society. They show their ugly faces during one of Tommy rallies and they go back to their business. And I've always thought that, never really taken him seriously. I've always thought, how can somebody like Tommy Robinson really be a face of that and really be someone that people trust and follow? I think through speaking to Dowie and stuff, it's kind of learned that this mindset is more of a spectrum, and there are lots and lots of people at the moment out there that are not happy, and they're being duped into believing that Muslims and immigrants are the ones that are the reasons why things are not going well. And they need to realize that if they get rid of all the Muslims, they're still going to have high energy bills. They're still going to have a cost of living crisis. They're still going to have all these issues. It's not going to solve a thing. And, Liam and Dowie having a conversation about certain parts of theology, about Islam and stuff, and Liam had no interest in learning. In reality, both of them have a common enemy, right? We're talking about these people above. And I think part of the answer of this, if it's possible, is to shift the energy from those guys with placards outside of immigrant hotels, to shift the energy of these guys on X that are just saying Muslim or dogs, and shift their energy to the place where it should be, looking at the people that are actually causing their lives to be crap, actually looking, finding out what's actually going on. And we all have a common enemy there, and we're just battling each other. And it's not from the Muslims. I think the Muslims are generally just going above their business. And all I see on X, I keep going on about X, but Muslims are just trying to defend their position. The far right are just digging in, and they're taking in all this misinformation, and they're becoming like these dogs with froth, like these Muslims. Look what they're doing. They're danger to our kids, danger, and they're just being duped. So yeah, look, hopefully we can continue doing some work towards it. It's like I said, I think from what I've learned from this, and even from Dowie's interaction with Liam, is really to try and convince people that are sincere. They're not all of them. Some of them would just hate Muslims, whatever you tell them. The ones that are sincere, let's try and shift the energy to where it should be.
Yeah, we all should be doing that, because we're supposed to argue with these guys. This is what I'm saying. This is kind of like we have to at some point, but we've got to start looking at who's behind it all.
Imran, any last sentiments on?
Yeah, so the title is "Convert Chooses Islam Over Britain." That's the title that Liam put out there, and I think that it's really interesting because there's a reason why Islam is the scapegoat at the moment, and it's not the obvious reason of they're fighting wars in all the Muslim countries or whatever. It's actually about what Islam is and what Islam stands for, and what Islam prevents. So what you're seeing huge corporate greed. You're seeing the concentration of wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people who control, large institutions, be it media, who control the infrastructure within the society. So we're seeing sort of companies that are involved in data analysis and data mining and data use in military organizations, like companies in America that are being they're having access to British data. So British, they're helping the British Department of Defense, Ministry of Defense with their data. Those same companies are now getting access to NHS data. Those same companies are helping MRCP, analyze its, financial data. And so they're basically getting a handhold on every single piece of information. This is going to further narrow the who earns the money, who doesn't make the money, and the rich are getting richer. You can't buy a house. Corporations like BlackRock, etc., are just buying up hundreds of thousands of houses on a yearly basis. Inflation's going up. A ticket from London to Birmingham costs more than a plane to fly to another country. These corporate, and it's all privately run. Thames Water, pumping sewage into the rivers directly. No real consequences, but still being subsidized, by the taxpayer. So it's all of these corporations. It's just really taking everything out of the country. And what Islam does a couple of things. So it doesn't allow the accumulation of wealth by individuals. You've got 2.5% of your wealth that's not used has to be given to the poor directly. So it prevents hoarding. You can't hoard. It prevents the things in society that distract you from understanding what's happening in the world. So, intoxicants, alcohol, etc. It prevents those things we're talking about. Sexual immorality, this whole idea of grooming gangs, and these things these are vulnerable girls who are not protected by anyone in their families who should be protecting them, and they're out in places where they shouldn't be, being given intoxicants or whatever and being taken advantage of. All of those things are prohibited by Islam, and families are promoted. The idea of a solid family structure that's going to be beneficial, and the idea of not being wasteful with your time, just screaming through stuff on social media, and so all these things are prevented by Islam. And so to bring a system in where you have everyone under control and everyone just consuming, because Islam is anti-consumerist. It's like, be content with what you have and strive for the greater good is a fundamental message. Of course it's going to be under attack, and I think that the world needs Islam, let alone any individual country, but Islam stands for that thing which is against what all of the elite are trying to do. And what we're seeing is and this is why Elon Musk is doing the Roman salute, if he wants to call it that, is because he wants to. They're trying to promote this type of hate. This is why Jordan was mentioning that he was having that presentation on that march, and he was talking about violence coming. Why are these uber rich people talking about violence on the streets? Because that's where they want your focus to be. They don't want to see that they've gone from a billionaire to a trillionaire in the same time that your bills have gone from £100 a week to £1,000 a week. And so if you want to know where the problems are and who's taking advantage of us and who's actually getting all of the benefits or whatever, just follow the money. Where is the money going? And then you get the answer. But ultimately, I agree, Brother Dowie, it's all about interaction. We've got to have these discussions. They're not necessarily arguments. Sit down, and even it can be robust, but sit down and you realize there's a lot more in common than we have that separates us. And we all want the same type of society generally. We want a society where there's cohesion. We want a society where there's rule of law. We want a society where kids and elderly and women are safe. We want a society where you can earn, with a reasonable wage, you can buy your own house and look after your family without your wife and your kids and everyone having to work to pay the water bill. That's what we're after. If that's the case, then what's preventing that? And those are the conversations going forward. But it's been really great. I think Brother Dowie did, mashallah, really well. May Allah bless him and increase him. It takes a lot of guts to go onto a place where they're clearly got an agenda. They're clearly going to barrack you. They're clearly going to try and get clips of you to say what they want you to say. And I think you held your corner well, mashallah. And I think that's really, we need more of this. And I think the review is good. I think the review is important to do because the fact that he had to put a comment under your statements of statistics is already a sign that he felt that you'd challenged him sufficiently to make him worried. And that sort of a disclaimer from him, this is going to be wrong, so just check for me.
Yeah, and I think
is enough for us to say.
I think we should make loads of videos, short things about Liam's statements and how the statistics actually don't support what he said. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, Brother Dowie, for your efforts.
Yeah, I mean, now I don't want to finish the stream on a negative. So what I want to say, inshallah, is that the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, they suffered much worse trial, tribulation, lies, deception. The Prophet himself ﷺ was slandered, and they called him all sorts of things, soothsayer and magician and this and that. Interestingly, they never called him a liar, because they actually had a name for him, which was Al-Amin, the truthful one, because they knew this man didn't lie, that he was always truthful, he was always honorable. So they made up all sorts of stories about the deen, Islam. And so in that sense, we're not unique, and this is not a first time. I think Dowie's statement is very true. We need to be active. Muslims need to be active. We're not supposed to just sit on the sidelines and just watch as the building, is set on fire. We need to be the mercy, and we need to be putting out that fire. And how we do it is intelligently. We don't give unnecessary ammunition to the non-Muslims by behaving badly. So when, young brothers make videos that are clearly provocative and, are going to stir up hatred and division, it's just irresponsible and it's un-Islamic. That's the point. It's not that we're acting a certain way. We're supposed to behave with the ideals of Islam, okay? If you have a preacher on the street and he's spouting out hatred against Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ignore him. Move away from there. Don't give him time. Let him foul his mouth if he wants to do that. We live in a country where the law says that is permissible. It doesn't matter what you think or I think, whether that's right or wrong. We have to, as Muslims, abide by the law. So ignore that. Don't allow people to provoke you and behave as a bad Muslim, which then actually has a reflection upon, oh, this is what Islam teaches them, because it's not. Islam doesn't teach us that. We live in a country, we've chosen to live in a country, to be born in a country and live our lives in a country where there are certain laws that we might not like. But guess what? As a Muslim, we have to abide by the laws of the land. We are given freedom to pray, to fast, to live your Muslim life. Alhamdulillah. And you know what? That's something to be very grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we have that. We don't have to sacrifice our religion living in England, because thankfully it's not expected of us. So where you have provocateurs, where you have people at speaker's corner or outside a mosque or on a street corner, somebody saying something that you don't like about the Prophet, peace be upon him, or about Islam, if that person is not somebody who's capable of having a decent discussion, an honorable discussion, a discussion with reason and with intellect, with decorum and respect, if you can't have that conversation, move away from that situation. Otherwise, you're just like a little kitten, a little cat with a little feather. The little feather is put in front of you, and you lose all sense of where you are and what you've got to do. You just keep chasing this feather. And Muslims are supposed to be better than that. That's not what we're supposed to be. Be good to your neighbors and engage with your neighbors and talk to people and answer questions in a respectful way, in a decent way, in a knowledgeable way. And if you're ignorant about Islam, then say, you know what, I'm not sure about that, but I'm going to go and find out and I'll answer your question. But engage with people in a positive way. Be a person who is power to unite people, not to divide. Don't become part of the problem. Okay. Now, I think this verse, mashallah, of the Quran does sum it up very beautifully. They want to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouths. So they lie, they cheat, they do all sorts of things to try to stop the spread of Islam. But Allah will perfect his light, even if the disbelievers hate it. In other words, the belief in one God, to have principles, to have values, these things are something that Allah is going to present to the people, and the people who are reasonable, are rational, are logical, have the ability to have introspection, and they carefully judge things. Many of them are today coming to Islam. So we should facilitate that and make that easy for people. It's not about forcing people. It's not about duress. It's about presenting the truth. And many decent people, when they see the truth, they accept the truth. And that's what Brother Dowie did. That's what Brother Yusuf did. That's what Jordan did. Okay, the truth was presented to them, and they investigated for themselves, and they realized that this was the truth. And alhamdulillah, they came into Islam, as so many tens of thousands, of hundreds of thousands, millions over Europe and America are adopting. Islam is a positive message. Yes, we have a role to play as well. Okay, we have a role to play as Muslims as well. Inshallah, let's step up and play that role. Okay, and doing these sort of streams, doing the EF Dawah or the other brothers doing what they're doing, we're just trying to make an attempt. Of course, everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? But all of these things have an effect. Dowie's videos, mashallah, Dowie, your channel that you have, is that what the channel is called, Dowie, that white Muslim fella? What's the channel called?
The YouTube channel is called Dowie, that white Muslim fella. The other channels are called Al-Rijal.
Al-Rijal, okay. So maybe if you can type those in the comments, Dowie, so people can access your work. Brother Ponders, Yusuf Ponders, you're working obviously with Sapiens Institute. You're also doing the Lighthouse project on there. You want to just tell us a little bit?
I'm running Lighthouse Mentoring, so you can check us out at www.lighthousementoring.org. It's a free private service where you can book a meeting, and it's very relevant to this whole conversation. And if you're a non-Muslim, you're interested in Islam, go book a meeting. You can have a chat with Abbas, with myself, with brother Dr. Imran. We're all mentors, and many of the other brothers as well. And we can have a chat privately for free. And you know, we're here to help with these questions. So the misinformation that people like Liam Tuffs is putting out, we can address that in a conversation. And all you need to do is book a meeting, and you get an email telling you when the date and time is that you've chosen. And you just join a link on a Zoom meeting. We can have a chat. So, you know, there's services like this that can help you. Mashallah, the brothers at EF Dawah doing live streams constantly. You can always, if you're a bit more comfortable being on a live stream, you can jump on one of them. Not everyone is, and if you're a bit more shy, then I just recommend a private meeting with Lighthouse Mentoring. But just one thing I need to make very, very clear. It takes, it's one of my favorite sayings, it takes one fool to drop a boulder into a well, and it takes 100 wise men to try to figure out how to get it back out again. Liam Tuff is someone who likes to just say little snippet things and to drop boulders, which is quite easy because he's just letting gravity do all the work. And he'll say something stupid. And it takes a lot to unpack that sometimes. It's very easy to oversimplify. And it's a lot more complicated to explain to simple people like him why that oversimplification doesn't do the topic justice. So just keep that in mind. And again, like he's someone that's in a position to put his guest constantly on the back foot, and he never puts himself on the position where he is on the back foot, where he's got to justify his positions. You know, they go on about being bastions of reason. But to be reasonable, you have to give your reasons. You have to explain, give your justifications for your position. He doesn't do that. What he's doing is if someone does try to explain, if someone does try to do their position justice, he calls it waffling. He calls it, you know, he oversimplifies it. And just don't trust people like him. If they're not willing to engage in a proper conversation, if he's not willing to step outside of his own little comfort zone, because mashallah, Brother Dowie went out of his own environment and into his particular area of discourse, where Liam Tuffs is in control, quote unquote, of the conversation. And he won't step outside of that because he gets to push the narrative where he likes to push it. And when it gets uncomfortable, he goes away from that. Like with the whole Epstein thing, when he asked the question, would Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam be in there? When Dowie answered how he did, he had to change the subject rapid because it's going somewhere where he doesn't want it to go. But yeah,
so finishing up, inshallah ta'ala, jazakallah khair to all of you who have attended today, and mashallah the mods as well, for jazakallah khair for all your lovely help, and it's crucially needed. It is Ramadan, so please do remember your brothers here on the stream, our families, that Allah bestows us all with afiyah, with sincerity, with good health and good mind. Of course, pray for the ummah as well, because yeah, we are going through a little bit of turmoil, but alhamdulillah, there's lots of positives that are happening as well. In particular, of course, we remember our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Yemen, in Sudan, the Uyghur Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims. There are Muslims pretty much all over the world who are going through immense difficulties that we could never really even imagine. So remember them in your dua. Do not lose your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the help is always near. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that Allah tests us through difficulties and through trials and through tribulations. And at the end, the one who bears it patiently and does their best to overcome these trials and tribulations, Allah has a great reward for that person. And on the Day of Judgment, we will wish that we were put in more trials and more tribulations, because the compensation on the Day of Judgment will be so great. So have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that help is near, inshallah. Do whatever you can do. Remember us all in your dua. Ramadan is a great time to earn rewards, to attain maghfirah, forgiveness for your sins. So remember Allah much, do lots of dua. Do not lose hope in the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is from shaitan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help and his forgiveness is always near. He just wants us to ask sincerely. And he does not like to turn people away empty-handed, because it's beyond his majesty to turn people away empty-handed. When a beggar comes to a king, he feels it's beneath him if he doesn't give him a couple of coins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the king of kings, the rulers of the rulers, the owner of everything, the sustainer of everything. And when we spread out our hands and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah says that he feels shy not to fill those hands with his rahmah, with his karam, with his forgiveness. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do please remember us all in your dua. And inshallah ta'ala, may Allah reward you all for joining us today. And inshallah ta'ala, we hope that you've benefited from this stream. I think with that, Dr. Imran, any last words before we end the stream?
Just remember the brothers and sisters around the world who are suffering and in under the yoke of oppressors. May Allah protect them from the oppression, and forgive us all for whatever inadequate things we are doing, and accept it. Amen. And pray for all the brothers and sisters, and for the great work that the mods have been doing, mashallah. Pray for the work that Brother Dowie and Jordan with Brother Yusuf Wonders have got involved in actually being the forefront of the faces dealing with the far right and the narratives. I think it's really important work. Pray for the success of that. I mean, and ultimately, anything good is from Allah, and anything that's mistaken there is from Shaitan, from ourselves. May Allah forgive our shortcomings. And with that, Brother Abbas.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa